I have just more news about my writing and the books and all of that I share on the newsletter. Sometimes I have book reviews on there and recipes, all kinds of fun stuff. The newsletter comes out once a month. It's just an email, so you can sign up for that. And and if you sign up for the newsletter, you do get a free story. So I have a novella that I've written that you will receive for free when you sign up for the newsletter. So that's always fun.
That is
and
fun.
the novella is a fun story too.
Yeah. Diane Miley, we're running out of time, but I just want to give you a minute. Anything else you want to say about the books or anything in the world you want to talk about?
I do want to mention that they are Christian books, so they do have a faith element. And one of the things that I encourage in the stories and through my writing is that, bad things happen in life, and that the main characters, learn through the stories to trust in God and grow in their faith. And I want to encourage the readers also to, when bad things happen, trust in God, pray, and, turn to your faith, and that helps you get through. And God has a way of turning all of those ashes into beauty in the end.
Nice.
So I always have a happy ending, and things always end up better than they were.
I mentioned that early in the interview, is that things that happen in your book happen in real life, stalkers and murders and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Thank you, Diane. I'm inspired by you now. So many books and more coming out. I hope you'll come back on the show again and again.
I would love to. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate your support of books and authors.
Thank you so much. I love books, and I love to talk to authors. So for our viewers, don't go anywhere. We're going to be back with another author right after this.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Hope Roski stepping in for Mike Briggs with Briggs on Books. Well, today I have a special guest coming in from Denver, Colorado via Zoom, and I would like to introduce author Jamie O'Donnell. Jamie, welcome to the show. It is so good to see you again.
Hey, Hope, it's good to see you too.
Yeah, so I hear it's like pretty cold there up in the Denver area. I see you're in your sweats and everything.
Yeah, it's about 20 degrees outside, and we're expecting some snow today.
Oh, my goodness.
It's been pretty nice up until today.
Okay, well, I hope you don't get anything that's going to lock you in blizzard-wise, because, oh, my goodness, I know the rest of the country's bracing. But speaking about bracing, you have a book that's out, Epiphany, that is to keep a reader on the edge of their seat. And I want to talk to you more about Epiphany, and basically because it is a thriller. Can you tell me a little bit about how you came up with it and the character development?
Well, I've written 3 previous books. I wrote Hunting for the Lamb of God and its sequel, Living for the Lamb of God. And then I also wrote Meth War, Lost, and Felony Flats. Now, all 3 of those books fall into the genre of horror thriller, where the first 2 I mentioned are a series, and that's also post-apocalyptic. This is also a horror thriller novel, so it's in that genre. And that's basically what I write. So, I think you got to write about what you know about, what you have an affinity for, and that's what I have an affinity for. So that's what I write about.
Right, and talking about with one of the main characters, I believe the husband, who is chasing, like looking to hunt down basically, and it's a murder mystery as it goes, or thriller. Can you kind of, not without giving it all away, but just kind of tell the viewers a little bit about what they can expect in this particular thriller?
Well, I can. So the book begins with one of the protagonists, Paul Nelson. He's an old man, and he is on his way back from Costa Mesa, on his way to to Virginia Beach, Virginia, to his home. He has a vitamin business that's taking off. He has a West Coast operation and his East Coast operation. But it's a worldwide business. And once a year, he goes out to the West Coast to oversee his operation out there, touch base, see what's going on. So he is on his way back. Now, the story starts, he walks out of a diner in the middle of the desert in Nevada at the crack of dawn. He had just had breakfast. He's on his way to start driving. And as he's walking out the door, he comes upon this young man slapping the crap out of this young woman. Mm-hmm. And he immediately intervenes, and he jumps in and he tells the young man, leave her alone. And the young man takes issue with that and whips out a knife on him and tells him he's gonna hurt the old man. And so Paul immediately reaches into his back belt where he keeps his 38 and points it at the young man, tells him basically never bring a knife to a gunfight. And the young man freaks out and puts the knife back in his pocket, and it gets all sheepish and tells the old man he wasn't gonna hurt her or hurt him or anything. So, but then what he does is, and all the while this young woman is looking at Paul like afraid for him to get involved to make it worse. So what the young man does is he goes into the back seat of his 79 Monte Carlo. He pulls out a suitcase, which is her suitcase, and he throws it onto the sidewalk in between the front bumper of the Monte Carlo and the diner. And he tells her to get her kid out of the car. And that is when the old man, Paul, notices there's a little 3-year-old boy sitting in the back seat, barely big enough to even look over the front seat. So she reaches back there, opens the passenger door, pulls the seat down, grabs her little boy, and then the young man gets in his Monte Carlo, starts it up, takes off, and strands her right there in the middle of the desert, starts speeding up Interstate 15. So Paul feels very guilty, and she's crying, and now they're stuck there, and it's literally in the middle of nowhere. The diner is just in the middle of nowhere. So Paul offers her a ride to the nearest women's shelter, which would be in Denver. And so he takes her and the little boy, and on the way he takes a liking to the little boy and takes a liking to her, and he wants to help them. So he offers her a job caretaking his home in Virginia in exchange for room and board and a small stipend, and she accepts. What none of them know, and what Paul didn't even know, that she's actually running away from her husband. This guy that was slapping her up was not her husband, but he's chasing her. He's tracking her
right
across the country. So now he's tracking them both across the country, and he wants to kill her and her son, which is also his son.
Right. So now it's like you have this good guy, the protagonist, Paul, who's trying to help out this abused woman and child and bring them to safety. Then you have the antagonist, which is her husband, the abuser, who is now tracking them to where they're going. So basically, he's going to be tracking them across country. In through the chapters, and as they're moving towards heading back east to where they're going, or to the destination, what are some of the other stops along the way? Is that addressed in the book, and what are some of the things that may kind of happen in pivotal moments?
Well, one of the things that the husband, his name is Lance Jorgensen, he's killing people along the way that have information.
Oh.
Yeah, so he's leaving a trail of dead bodies in his wake. And so the book primarily tracks all those instances that he is having with people, and her Lizzie, the girl, and Paul and her son. And he's kind of tracking both of them on their trips until they culminate when they both arrive in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
And that is when the real story starts.
So that hits more of the climax of the book once they all get back to the Virginia Beach area. But what's interesting is that he is, her husband is doing serial killings along the way. Is at any point law enforcement involved in this, or is it just strictly just kind of the journey, or are there other people looking for him as well?
No, once they arrive in Virginia Beach, they're alerted by law enforcement that her husband is searching for her and most likely on his way to Virginia Beach if he's not already there to do her harm.
Right. So, I mean, we can't, of course, give away the ending of the book, but it sounds like, and usually to read a book like this is not typically my genre, but you have definitely piqued my interest because the aspect of this chase that's happening, and it's kind of like a beat the clock, if you will, and will this woman and her child, will they be able to be safe? Will Paul be able to be the hero? These are all things that the reader has to wait to find out.
Exactly. There are two epiphanies in the book, and I just told you one of them.
Yes.
The first epiphany is Paul's wanting to help this woman and help her son. That's the epiphany he arrives at after he offered that ride to Denver. The second epiphany is really you won't expect it when it happens, but it's at the end of the book, and we certainly can't give that away.
We cannot give that away. So I think now that some of these viewers have had an opportunity to hear about this wonderful, wonderful book that you have written, how are they able to order it? Can you give a website for them to order?
Well, they can go to my website, which is www.jamieodonnell, that's JamieOdonnell.com. There is a purchase page on there that's got links where they can go, or they can just go to the usual suspects. They can go to Amazon.com,
right,
or they can go to Barnes & Noble. It's going to eventually be available on 62 different platforms, but the two best platforms, I would think, are Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And this book, unlike my previous three, also has a hardcover.
Fantastic.
So you can get this book in ebook, paperback, or hardcover.
Excellent. I don't, before we leave, because it's the word epiphany, January 6th is actually Epiphany Day. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. It's kind of ironic that we're doing this. But, and I don't want to take away from some of the other books that you've had the opportunity to write too. Can you just touch base a little bit about each one? If people want to order, besides Epiphany, just give them a little summarization about each of the other books that you've had an opportunity to write.
Sure. So the first book that I wrote was in 2021. That's Hunting for Lamb of God. It's post-apocalyptic, and basically what happens is Iran and North Korea, after years of crippling sanctions, they collaborate together and they construct 3 nuclear warheads. They put them on container ships and they park them off the east and west coast of the United States. They fire off simultaneously, and they all explode in the atmosphere miles above us, and it creates a super electromagnetic pulse. It completely fries everything electrical, anything computerized, anything with wiring in the lower 48, southern Canada, northern Mexico, Cuba, and the Caribbean islands. It literally throws us back into the Stone Ages, into the early 1800s. That means no running water, no cars, no electricity, no TV, no internet, no phone, no radio, nothing. Everything stops. And,
that is, I mean, and I tell you, if that actually happened, I don't know what this world would do at that point.
well, the thing about it is that it's a very, very possible scenario.
Sure.
We are extremely vulnerable to that. Now, this book was awarded a Kirkus Star, which is kind of rarefied there. If you know anything about Kirkus, a Kirkus review is the Cadillac of all book reviews, and they award maybe 1 out of every 10, 15 books that they review a Kirkus Star. So it was awarded a Kirkus Star. So that book has been doing really well.
Congratulations,
thank you.
to you. That what an honor. What an honor.
The next book after that was a book that I had originally started to write 20 years ago, but was shelved. And I picked it back up and I finished it. And it's called Meth War, Lost in Felony Flats. And it's a fictional account of the great methamphetamine war in 1993 in the San Bernardino Valley between the Satanic Underground and the independent meth cooks. And it basically incorporates every myth, rumor, and half-truth that I'd ever heard when I was out on the streets shooting meth myself. In full disclosure, I am a recovered methamphetamine addict. I've been clean now for 23 years.
Good for you.
So that's what that's about, and that has literally, and it's very pulpy. When people talk about reading something that's pulp fiction, it's usually referred to, at least back in the old days, as poor writing, but direct to the point. Well, mine is not poor writing. I'd like to think it's very good writing, and it's also been critically acclaimed. And so there's that book, and I would highly recommend it to read. It's a fantastic thriller. And then I wrote the sequel to Hunting for the Lamb of God, because Hunting for the Lamb of God kind of ends on a cliffhanger, and I pick it up where that one leaves off, and that has got some finality to it. It kind of brings everything to a close, to where it's satisfying, and it just goes further into the story, a few years into the story. So that's basically my 3 books.
Wow, I think they all sound amazing, and I wish you all the best on Epiphany. It sounds amazing, and the fact that you've already, accolades to you for already winning an award. This one may be the next one coming up. You just don't know, but I really think you've got a winner on your hands right here, Jamie.
Thank you. I hope so.
I believe you do. It'll be a great way to start 2025. And, keep it up. Keep it moving forward. I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Appreciate you having me.
You bet. This is Hope Roski with Briggs on Books.
Welcome back to Briggs on Books, where I get to talk to authors from all over the world about their books, their ideas, how they got it done, how much work is it to get a book out there. How come I don't have a book out there? It's so much work, and I like to get authors on the show who've done it and been through the nightmare and the struggles of getting a book out. Look at this book right here, Talking Pictures by Joe Cacciarelli. Not only do I have his book here, by the way, whoops, lost my whole mouse. Nobody go anywhere. Not only do I have his book, I have Joe here all the way from, I think, South Carolina. Is that right, Joe?
Correct.
Welcome on the show, Joe.
Great to meet you, Mike.
Talking Pictures. What's that book about?
Talking Pictures is a collection of short stories, each of which respectively inspired by a famous painting of Edward Hopper, who we can summarize as having documented the culture and the style of living that came to be associated with New York City between the wars, and I take a liberty with one of the paintings to extend it beyond that period into the late 90s. Yeah. But it's circumscribed by, say, around the end of World War I till the end of World War II.
Yeah. Edward Hopper, I'm not an expert.
He was a great realist. He was a great realist portrait painter, born in Nyack, New York, His home is subsequently turned into the Hopper Museum,
Right.
and each of the stories is drawn from one of the paintings, and the only imaginary character in the story is the character in the painting.
In the painting. Now,
Hopper actually appears in two.
I always say this about Edward Hopper
at-
is I know his paintings when I see them.
Well, you said you had a copy of Nighthawks. You might want to
Yeah,
turn
here's
that.
Nighthawk. Maybe our viewers will say, "Oh yeah, I know that painting." A lot of people don't know the author or the painter, but when you see an Edward Hopper, you always know that's Edward Hopper. So your
Totally.
book makes up an imaginary tale of different paintings.
Each story attempts to describe the character in the painting and the moment of angst and loneliness that that character was going through, since Hopper came to be equated with the psychological experience of angst and loneliness in the urban landscape. However, you do talk a lot about process, and I do want to get to that before we ramble all over the place. Basically, this is the history of my work where I am now. I began as a editorial assistant at Garland when we were putting out the definitive edition of James Joyce's Ulysses. Because of those contacts, I ended up writing a book for Garland, which subsequently got taken over by Taylor Francis. Okay, it's called Screen Sleuths. It's a filmography. From there, I went on in my summers after teaching high school and college to write the novel that describes what the Beowulf poet did in order to write the Old English epic. That's Ghost Song. Okay. After 2020, after my bout with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I wrote a cancer journal, and it's called Still Life with Cats. I don't know if you can see that.
Still Life with Cats.
Got a great photograph
Yeah.
of Sir Walter Raleigh waiting in the Tower of London to be decapitated by James I. It's kind of like a metaphor for the cancer experience. And at the end, when I was spent with all my earlier ideas, I had this pile of old short stories from my juvenilia dating back to the 70s. I actually had the privilege of having one of the stories that's in Talking Pictures, New York movie, being turned down by the New Yorker, even though I was I guess, protege of Christopher Lamenhaupt's. I think that name will tell you how far we go back, the book reviewer for the New York Times.
Yes. Yep.
And his mother tried to promote my work with the then literary editor, but of course, no dice, and, the story never went anywhere. However, I had been mentored by Edmund White, who you should know is probably one of the prominent modern novelists, Waiting for Elena and The Room, the Room is Empty, and a biography of Proust, etc. And I also had the good fortune of having my work mentored by Edward Albee, the leading absurdist playwright of American drama in the 1960s. So to make a long story short, this pile at the end of Still Life with Cats is sitting in there, and I'm looking at it thinking, how can I rework these stories in a better context? Because while Edmund White and Albee praised the plotting, they were not thrilled with the style. So to make a long story short, I had recently read in a Dawn Powell novel called The Golden Spur how a has-been revives her literary career by rewriting the stories from another point of view. And of course, that essentially wrote itself. Talking Pictures, however, has also the arcane accident of being considered by a small publisher, John Colby, who said, are any of the paintings in public domain? And that's what made bells go off. And so I found that Nighthawks was doable, none of the rest. But one painting that I didn't consider, Girl at a Sewing Machine, did end up in the collection, and it becomes the first story in the collection, and it occurs before Hopper became equated with angst and loneliness. But I think that the heroine there, she personifies the kind of person that would attract Hopper in the first place before he even became obsessed with just the psychological dimensions. And little by little, that sewing machine pose becomes the story of her unhappy, jilted love affair with someone who turns out to be a priest. While she's imaginary, the priest was my grandmother's half-brother, a great-uncle, one of the most brilliant seminarians at the University of Louvain in Belgium. Mm-hmm. He began his parish work working with a doctorate in sacred theology, even though he was an extraordinary builder of public works for his parish community. And he's real Raphael Tuffy. The Triangle Shirt Factory, in which the heroine's cousin is burned to death, is real. Hopper is clearly real, and his obsession with this new lady that he met. And essentially, the story unfolds as Hopper is trying to get her to pose without emotion, and eventually they come to the realization, I won't tell you the end, that she no longer needs to work on a wedding dress for a marriage that's never going to happen, and he might be able to use it for his intended bride. But that's the most I want to tell you about.
Don't give away any more than that.
Yes. The rest, so obviously it's too bad Mr. Colby did not decide to publish the book, because he inspired the first story. I wrote it in. Oh, and my son, who is an on and off addict of Henry James, decided that we should also pay homage to Charles Dickens in it. So there is an extraordinary reference to the wedding gown to Miss Havisham's final accident in Great Expectations.
Wow.
There are lots of literary allusions throughout the stories.
This is an amazing approach to a book, Joe. It's refreshing.
Well, out of accidents come sometimes great results. Not always, but in this case, I think that if you read Girl at a Sewing Machine, you'll agree.
I agree, yes. I can't wait. I'm kind of a nerd about stuff like this. I'll read it, and I'll be into it. I'll be studying.
God bless you.
I'll be studying backstories and things like that, references.
Right.
Did it take you a lot of research? Did this just flow out of your head, or did you do a lot of research?
Every painting, every story corresponds to the historical period in which the paintings were executed by Hopper. Yeah. Therefore, Girl at a Sewing Machine, the aftermath of World War One. Okay, and as with Sundays, the painting that depicts a very odd man, actually he's mentally disturbed, seated on the curb of 7th Avenue, and little by little, we realize that Hopper is spying on him from across the street, another tenement, as he paints this dejected person, and the story tells how he got to that point of catatonic emotional nervous breakdown.
Wow.
Okay, so that's Sundays. And of course, because of his actual involvement with people who were either killed or came back damaged from the trenches, he has, and it's great for civil rights at the time, an encounter with a black vet who becomes the source of what he thinks is going to be a solution to his problem that he can't get over his dead lover. Yeah. The black vet jokingly discloses to him that there's a madman in the neighborhood who's running a brothel, and he keeps an Edison spirit phone. Do you know what the Edison... This is all real. Yeah. Edison invented a phone through which he believed people could contact the dead. So poor Joe Sunday goes to this man Renfrew's establishment, pays the money to sit in the room where he's basically just doped with incense and funny lighting, but he believes that he's actually contacted his dead girlfriend. And at the time, when he's called back to, prison time, the young man, also a prostitute in the brothel, comes to tell him his time is over, and he finds that the young man has an uncanny resemblance to his dead brother who died from the Spanish flu.
Wow.
Wait, it gets better. At that point, Joe decides that he's lost the woman of his dreams, but he's going to save this young man who reminds him of his brother. Right. Trust me, whenever we start to play God, you always can be sure it never ends well. So that's so much for Sundays. Is there anything you want to ask me about that story? Because the painting is probably the quintessential Hopper example of angst and loneliness that exists. In fact, many of the people that read the story couldn't understand what was going on until I explained to them, you're delving into the psychology of somebody who's had a complete catatonic breakdown.
Yeah. Now, I know some of the Edward Hopper paintings are in public domain. Is your book illustrated?
Only? No, there aren't. Nighthawks and Girl at a Sewing Machine and his self-photo, which appears on my cover, that's in public domain. For some reason, wherever the museum is in Chicago in the Midwest, they forgot to renew our Nighthawks, and lucky me, I alighted for the kill.
Yeah. Joe, I can't even stop you from talking. You're so fascinating. I want to go on and on. You have time for
No.
Yeah,
I want to talk to you about the stories because I think that as we progress, we'll find out, in a way, the stories recount. Everybody wants to know, how did New York become? You say to me, your children have relocated from sunny California to not very pleasant New York City. And you can see throughout the course of the history, the crime spread because of the awful situation with creeps like Hoover and the rest of the Central Intelligence, the machinations of the various financiers. I think there's one name that should come to mind. He currently owns China. And of course, the Bushes are always there when big crimes are ready to be committed.
Yeah.
And from there, we get to a story about a very mixed couple. She's Ukrainian Jewish, he's Ukrainian Orthodox Catholic, and they're struggling to get out of Stalin's Russia. Now, here the real characters come. My colleague, throughout my teaching career, in fact, she got me my first job at this school where I retired, from which I retired, Brooklyn Technical High School. Her father was a great humanitarian and Zionist, and he did things like this to help people escape from the Iron Curtain. So the couple in the painting, the girl, her husband is not in the painting, and their children become the subject of the story and their difficult romance and how they're adjusting to living on Delancey Street in a view from Williamsburg Bridge. It's chock full. I mean, if you have this penchant for kosher cooking, Katz's Deli, and the dairy restaurant Ratner's is depicted in full. There's lots of references that require you brushing up on your Hebrew and Yiddish, but essentially the story unfolds how her children, her husband ends up as a doorman at the posh, speaking of, what we lost with the Czars, à la Veille Russie. Do you know what that it was and still is?
No.
À la Veille Russie is one of the largest collections of Russian, artifacts and Fabergé eggs and other, treasures. And it's still there on Fifth Avenue and 59th Street under the Sherry Netherlands. But the story does and doesn't end happily. They managed to get out of the cramped apartment on Delancey Street to one of the newer projects that were being constructed under Roosevelt's efforts. Let's say one thing he did good, the Mitchell-Lama projects. This is all real. I lived in the East Village. I knew these. In fact, I had a friend who lived in one of the apartments 60 years after the fact. And while she doesn't end well, her children's story is given in fast forward a la Gogol in The Overcoat, and you can juggle between Russian styles. Also, the husband is a nephew of Anna Akhmatova, the new style of writing poetry under Stalin, and she and her lover were basically hounded by Stalin until his death, and then she died in old age. after the purges were concluded. But Anak Matova is quoted extensively because her nephew thinks that he's going to be a great author too. It's quite a pipe dream. They all are in cahoots with the effort to promote Great Gatsby. I don't know if you're aware, when Gatsby was published, it was a disaster. It was only later academics that revived it. But they feel like they're on Fitzgerald's level at some time, and they're not. They're somewhere stuck between the old time Yiddish theater and other writers who, most people don't even read because of the language barrier.
Well, Joe, if people want to know more, they're going to have to get the book and read the book, because we've gone way over time. Which I enjoyed very much talking to you, by the way. Where can people get the book?
You can order it on Amazon currently. It's on there with all my other books. And they have to have the correct spelling. Obviously, it's just Joe Cocciarelli, Talking Pictures. No, we don't have time for New York Movie, The Office at Night, the Mafia. New York Movie, the FBI takes over. The Office at Night, the Mafia is making a hit on a woman who thinks she's dealing with her husband who was presumed dead. And finally, in Talking Pictures, let's say it's kind of like a ghost tale, except that it deals extensively with all the work that Larry Kramer did to denounce Fauci when he was at the height of his machinations for AIDS. As you know, Fauci went on with the Wuhan virus and got a lot more people to go along with his nefarious designs.
Joe, you're delightful.
That's Nighthawk. That would be Nighthawk.
Nighthawk, yeah, you're delightful to talk to. The best guests, I get to just sit back and let them go, and you did that, and you entertained us for the entire time. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you're entertained, but the important thing is to take the short story form and create a new approach, whereas only the character in the title is imaginary, and everybody else there is based on either historical people I knew, or in the case I didn't know Edison with his hoax of the spirit phone, but you can easily look it up and research it to know what life was like in the aftermath of the Trench War as we were waiting for the first atomic war.
Yes. Joe, thank you.
Things were not moving. They were not moving in a positive trajectory for mankind. He wants you to ask me some more questions.
For our viewers, don't go anywhere, because we have another author coming up right after this. Joe, I'm sorry we have to run. We are just booked back to back, but we're going to have you on again.
Sorry as it was really a thrill to get to speak with you. Thank you so much, Mike. Whatever you can do for boosting my books' popularity, but Talking Pictures is currently available, and no one will leave disappointed.
All righty. We'll be back with more authors right after this. Are you about to pick the next book you read? Well, I've got some ideas for you. Also, it's coming up to holiday season. I know what you're going to give as gifts this holiday. You're going to give books, aren't you? Before you make any purchases, check out this series. I call it the Stone series. The new one by Margaret Izzard is Stone of Lust. Not only do I have the book here, actually she has a couple of new books. I also have Margaret. Let's see if I can click around and find her. There she is. Margaret Izzard. Welcome, Margaret.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Stone of Lust. By the way, here's some of her previous books. Here's Stone of Hope. Here's Stone of Love. And the newest, one of her newest books is Stone of Lust. And also, I should say this before we go too far, Margaret. Is this the newest? Thistle?
Thistle and the Mistletoe.
Okay. Is that your newest, or is Stone of...
That's the most recent release.
Okay.
That's my holiday release that came out November 4th.
Yeah. This is the one everybody's going to want to give out during the holiday season. Tell us about it, Margaret.
Thistle and the Mistletoe actually features a couple that we met in Stone of Love. In Stone of Love, Colin travels back in time and assumes the identity of his identical ancestor. So Thistle and the Mistletoe looks at how that ancestor met his love. So it actually occurs before Colin came back in time. There's no time travel in it. There is a little bit of magic because the magic stones, those magic Iona stones are there. So there's a little bit of magic involved in it, but it's a little bit more straightforward of a historical romance novel. that takes place in 17th century Scotland. It was actually something that I've wanted to write for a long time. I've always imagined Roderick and Mary's relationship and courtship occurring over the holidays. And, since it's an enemies to lovers romance, I thought I'd put Thistle in the middle of it because, thistles are spiny. So that's why we call it Thistle and the Mistletoe, is that through clan wars and clan enemies, the two are thrown together and have to kind of forge their way and find love.
Nice. Now, Margaret, do we need to read your books in order, or can we just pick up any one and start there?
Well, that's a really good question. They are written with enough information at the beginning that if you happen to pick one up in the middle, the first one's love, the second one's fear, the third one's lust. There's the Christmas Thistle and the Mistletoe. You mentioned Stone of Hope, which is coming in January. If you pick up any one of these, you can start from that point. However, a lot of my critics, a lot of my reviewers, a lot of people, especially a lot of my readers and followers, the stories are so much more enriching if you read them in order, because there's things that link back and hook up and little tidbits here and there that you might not be able to pick up. But they're if you happen to pick up Stone of Fear, the second book, there's enough to get you through the book at the beginning to understand what's all going on.
That's great. Yeah, I'm going to start in order. Which is the first one, by the way?
Stone of Love.
Stone of Love. Okay. There it is. I just happen to have it right here. Stone of Love. Start with Stone of Love. You know what? If you're going to give this book out at Christmas time, just buy the whole series for whoever you're giving the book to, and that would be a much better gift, I think. Now, the most recent, which one is the most recent? No, we did
Besides the Christmas book,
Yes.
The Stone of Lust.
There it is.
Stone of Lust is book 3 and actually focuses on Colin's sister, Annis Lee. And Annis Lee tries to help save Brielle, which is Colin's love, from the first book. She tries to save her from being kidnapped, and they actually get pulled through a portal in time and back into the Viking Age. So Stone of Lust focuses on the MacDougall's ancestry, the Lord of Lorne and the Vikings, and Annis Lee is sort of this warrior woman, a modern woman in the Viking times who is an expert at Viking warfare. That is a hobby of hers. And so she's thrust in her most favorite time with it she's living. And so, things kind of unfold from there. I don't want to give it all away, but it's a wonderful little time travel story. We see Brielle and we see Colin again from the first book, and it has a really nice ending.
Yeah. Are these all set in Scotland? Mostly in Scotland?
The first 4 books, the first 3 books and the Christmas book are set in Scotland. Now, Stone of Hope is not.
Okay.
Stone of Hope focuses on Brielle's brother, who is a fighter pilot. He's an adrenaline junkie. It starts off in Florida, and he actually accidentally time travels with his niece and nephew to Egypt of the 1930s. So we find ourselves in Egypt at archaeological digs and fighting mystic forces there.
Amazing. So all my family's Scottish, and none of us have ever been to Scotland, so they're all going to enjoy these books. In my introduction, I called these the Stone series. What do you call the series?
Stones of Iona.
Oh, Stones of Iona. What does Iona mean?
Iona is an island. It's actually one of the Western Isles in Scotland, and it's considered a very mystic island. It actually sits on a ley line, so it's polarized. So if you go at the top is at the highest point on the island, it's magnetized there. So one side of the island is one type of rock, the other side of the island is another type of rock. So it within itself is very mystical. There's the Iona Abbey there. So the stones come from Iona, and the MacDougalls are their guardians, and they're keeping them safe for the fairies, for the fae.
Now, did you have to do a lot of research for these books?
Yes, yes. There's a lot of the historical elements that you find in the books are they're real. They're real accountings. There is a lot of history research that goes into these books. There's a lot of folklore and a lot of folk stories from the Scottish heritage that are involved in the books that we link through these stories. So there's a lot of research in how I bring these historical elements and these folklore stories together and merge it with a story of love.
Nice. Very nice. And of course, you had to go to Scotland probably many times to do your research?
I've been once. We went a couple years ago. My husband and I went together for about 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
We started in Glasgow. We went up for Cairngorms and finished in Edinburgh, and it was an absolutely wonderful trip. My favorite stop was Oban. Outside of Oban is where the two castles are that I focus my series on, which is Dunstafnage and Donnelly Castle. Oban is considered the gateway to the Western Isles. It is also the location for the Stone of Lust, and it is the Viking stronghold when the Viking times was around Scotland. And so the bay there, it's still there's still a lot of the same historical buildings. The entire town faces the bay. We spent 2 days there. It was absolutely magical. The inn faced the bay in the sunset. So every time at dinner, I sat and watched the sunset over this bay and over the Western Isles, and it was just beautiful.
Amazing. I'm glad you got to do that. Margaret, I have your web address on the screen. Margaret is author.com. What would our viewers find there?
Oh my goodness. All my books are featured there. I have a section about what's coming up and my appearances, the different appearances that I have going on. You also want to link into my socials. I do a number of Facebook parties, a number of different social media parties that I'm involved with where I do giveaways. I've got especially in Facebook over the next month for the holidays, I've got a lot of little parties and giveaways going on there. My social handle is Mizard Author, so that's Mizard Author. It's where you will find me on all my social handles, including Blue Sky. So you certainly want to follow me there, kind of keep up with things. You can sign up for my newsletter. I have a monthly newsletter, and occasionally I'll pop out in the middle of the month, maybe some little announcements if I've got something special going on. I also have a secret section in my website that is where the fairy realm is. So if you click on any of the little fairy icons on any of the pages, that will take you to the fairy realm, and Colin's Fairy Bridget will walk you through some things there. So that's a little secret section for certain people.
Let me just say, nobody would know about those secret spots on the webpage except when they watch Briggs on Books. Margaret gave
That's
us
right.
something for free. Thank you, Margaret. I'm fascinated by this and by your books, and of course, newly discovering that I'm from Scotland, or I'm Scottish, almost 100%. I can't wait to dig into them and unlock some of the traditions of Scotland through your books. We're way past time. I always do that with you, Margaret. I don't know why. You're just fascinating to talk to. But any last thoughts before we go?
No, the series, well, actually, the series is 7 books. The series is complete. Stone of Hope comes out in January, which is the 4th book. The 5th book is in production, which is Doubt, and the other ones will soon follow. There is another Christmas companion book that'll come out next Christmas. And after that, we actually go straight into another series that links to this one, that is the Dragons of Tantalon, which are my dragon shapeshifters that you meet in the first book in Stone of Love. So nice. I've got a lot coming.
A lot going on. Now, Stone of Hope, is that the one coming out?
Yes, that's the one coming in January.
Yeah. Well,
January 13th.
Apparently, because I was just there on Amazon, you could order it now.
Yes, it's on pre-order now. That's correct.
And I just happen to have the cover. So excellent, Margaret. Thank you so much for coming on the show again. You're one of my favorite guests, and I hope you'll come back again and again. I will. I don't have to hope you'll write another book so you can come back, because I know you have so many in the works. That's fascinating, Margaret. For our viewers watching, don't go anywhere, because we have another author coming up right after this. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Briggs on Books, our international talk show. I talk to authors all over the world. I have the best job in the world. I love to read. I love to talk to authors, and I get to do that every day. Here's an interesting new book, Karma and Kismet. It's about a spiritual journey across continents. And not only do I have the book here, check this out. I have the author, Michael Chandler. Welcome, Michael.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Can you tell our viewers about where you're located?
I'm in Amherst, Massachusetts.
Oh, Amherst.
It's about 100 miles west of Boston.
Are you I noticed you're Dr. Chandler. Are you a professor?
No, I'm not.
but you had quite a life. I mean, you got to tell our viewers where you were born and about a little bit about the book and your journey.
Yeah, I was born in Cape Town, South Africa, 1946, just after the Second World War. And I grew up there until I was 20. And then I left the country. And I'm sure maybe we'll get a chance to talk about how that came about and
Yeah.
what happened to me.
And so the book, it's a memoir.
It is a memoir,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, tell us some of the story, how you came to leave South Africa and where you went on. And it was a spiritual journey?
So I grew up in, during the apartheid time in South Africa. And it was just a few years after the war, in the early 1950s and 60s. And I grew up in a family. My mother was a Holocaust survivor. And she had, how shall I say, PTSD, I guess would be the polite way of saying it. And my dad was a soldier, and he was also damaged by the war. He was wounded, and but more important than that, he was psychologically affected. The stress affected him, and he tended to be mercurial. He could fly off the handle at any moment, and I was always kind of guarding myself against potential violence. So I had that in the house, and my mom, of course, was very erratic. But outside the house, it being so close to the Second World War, the half of the white population in South Africa were Afrikaners. The other half were English, and I fit into the English cadre. But the Afrikaners had gone to war with the English in the Anglo-Boer War, and the British had actually won that war and given the Afrikaners, really quite a humiliating loss, really. And during the war, during that war, lots of elders, Afrikaner elders, women, and children were incarcerated and put into the first concentration camps that we know about. And about over 27,000 of them died in the concentration camps. So when the war was over, they were pretty pissed off with the British, and they felt humiliated and so on. And then, from a Jewish point of view, the Afrikaners blamed the Jews for helping the British to keep them in poverty after the war. So there was a lot of animosity going back to the turn of the 20th century, really, vis-a-vis Jews. Well, I was born 46 years later, but that animosity was still strong. And in fact, before the Second World War, the Afrikaners in large numbers had joined Nazi movements in South Africa. They had the gray shirts, for example, which was the equivalent of the Nazi brown shirts in Germany and Austria. So, and they beat up Jews, and they beat up any usually English-speaking young man who wanted to join the Allied war effort to fight as a soldier. So there was a lot of tension. And then by 1948, the Afrikaners actually gained power in South Africa, and thus began the famous apartheid legal system. Of course, South Africa had been a pigmentocracy going back, 200 years anyway, if not longer, probably 300 years actually. And so by the time the Afrikaners came along, they learned from the Nazis. In fact, some of them had gone to Germany to learn directly from the Nazis, and they used what they learned to formulate the apartheid system. So I grew up in this. I was an unusual kid in the sense that, most kids either were educated in the English tradition, or if they were Afrikaners, they were educated in the Afrikaner system. But when I was 13, my father decided it's probably a good idea for me to become a bilingual South African, and he sent me to an Afrikaner school far away from where I lived in Cape Town, in a desert area, which was most famous for being the most prominent place where ostriches were reared and the feathers were used. And the reason why ostriches were so popular at one time was because ostrich feather boas and hats were extremely popular with women. It was the big sort of women's fashion craze, which went on for 40 years.
Wow.
So ostrich feathers were incredibly valuable. They were worth more than gold by weight, as a matter of fact, and they were South Africa's fourth largest export. So, anyways, I got sent to boarding school in this place where I couldn't speak the language. It was a tough place. It was very anti-Semitic, and it was really the beginning of me kind of awakening to, I guess you'd call it, relatively big challenges for a 13-year-old.
Oh boy.
And so I spent 3 years in this place. It was a tough place, and I write about it in some detail in the book.
Right.
Then I went back to Cape Town, finished high school, matriculated, and 10 days later I was inducted into the South African Army,
Oh boy.
where I really didn't want to be. I wasn't politically sophisticated, but I had an instinctive aversion, if you will, to the whole sort of system of apartheid, the narrowness, the kind of psychological conservativeness of the Afrikaners. And but anyways, I went back and finished high school, went immediately into the Army, and in the Army I was badly injured in another anti-Semitic incident. So by the time I was 19, I was really pretty fed up with South Africa. I felt like an outsider. I didn't feel much allegiance to the country. My parents' marriage was on the rock. It was pretty unhappy scene. And I won't go into too much detail about how bad it was. You'll just have to take my word that it was very bad. If you want to read the details, you got to read the book.
Read the book, okay.
So at that time, the war in Israel, the 1967 Six-Day War, broke out. And I was so unhappy in South Africa. And when they called for volunteers, I was number 3 in line. I said, take me. I'll do anything to get out of here. I'll even, I'll work, I'll do whatever it takes. I just want to get out of here. So they paid my way. And next thing I knew, within a week, I was living on a kibbutz in Israel. And it so happened that my kibbutz parents, a couple who was assigned to me to take care of me, the husband, my kibbutz father, my Abba, who happened to be a high officer in the IDF, in the Israeli Defense Forces. And he took me on a trip to the Golan Heights. This is only, short time after the war. And there was, everything on the battlefield could still basically be seen. And there was a lot of wreckage, it was obvious that a lot of people had died there. And it totally freaked me out. I realized that I had just come out of the South African Army, managed to get out of it.
Yeah.
That's another story in the book about what happened with that. I won't spoil the book by telling you, but basically it was quite a harrowing escape. And here I was on the Golan Heights with my kibbutz father, this high officer, and he was sort of proudly showing me around. And I was freaking out, saying to myself, oh my God, if I stay here in Israel, even though other things are good, I'd have a place to live. I could live on the kibbutz. I'd have a girlfriend. There was even one girl that was after me. And I was like, wow, this is pretty nice. I had a job. I knew what I was going to do on the kibbutz or what they expected me to do. And it was well within my capacity. So life was pretty sweet, except for this one minor detail, which was that there was no doubt I would be conscripted into the Israeli army if I stayed there. And I said to myself, I had a kind of a battlefield awakening, if you will. And I said to myself, am I ready to die for this?
Yeah.
And I looked around and the answer came back, no. I'm not that committed. Even though my family, including my mother, had been rescued by Zionist partisans who had brought her from basically escaping by the skin of her teeth from Hitler, had brought her to Palestine. So I felt a kind of a familial duty to be loyal. But the question was, is that loyalty, is it stronger than really my life?
Yeah.
And the answer was, as I said, the answer was no. So the question was, I didn't feel I could go back to South Africa. Everything about South Africa was depressing. I did not want to go back. The question was, I didn't want to stay in Israel now either, because it suddenly seemed pretty dangerous for a 21-year-old, guy. And I remembered then that my mother had 2 brothers who, like her, had been dispersed around the world, and they had wound up in Vancouver, Canada. So it was January 1968. I wrote them a letter. After about a month, I got a torn piece of paper back with $100 bill pinned to it and one line. It said, "We hope this helps you to get here. If you come, you'll be welcome." So I had my marching orders, and off I went to Vancouver. And it turned out that my two uncles, Ernst and Walter, were really quite difficult characters in the sense of that they were themselves. They had been child survivors, and they were pretty PTSD themselves. So it was kind of tough. I began to live with one of them, and it was kind of tough. He was an insomniac who talked nonstop all night, and so on. So it was difficult. It was very difficult. But about 6 months after I had arrived, I decided I wanted to go to college. And so I applied and I got into college and started going to college. And pretty soon, other kids and even one of my professors said, "Hey, have you ever turned on?" I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" They said, "Well, have you ever taken a psychedelic trip?" Well, I was, very, very straight young guy from South Africa. That was about the farthest thing from my mind. But I said, "Well, what the heck, I'm 21 years old. I'll try it." So, in fact, one of my professors arranged for me to come to his house and he guided me on my first psychedelic trip. And it was an amazing, amazing event in my life. It woke, I'll just be straight about it. It woke me up. I realized that how much armor I had on me from my South African sojourn, and that I wanted nothing more than to shed that armor and open up and experience life in a more, I guess, whole way, if you will, and that I wanted to be happy. And I realized that I was carrying a lot of weight around with me, and I wanted to find a way to kind of offload that. So I went through a few years of experimentation, and eventually I heard about a guy by the name of Ram Dass, who was a former professor at Harvard, and he was partners with Timothy Leary, the famous Timothy Leary. And I wrote him a letter, and I told him, I said, I've taken LSD and mescaline and magic mushrooms, and I feel like something spiritual has been awoken in me. Can you basically give me some guidance here? And so he wrote me a letter, and he said, at the time I was living in Montreal, he said, "Set up a talk for me and we'll meet, and during that time we'll have an opportunity to talk." Well, I set up a talk for him, 2 talks in fact, and it turned out that what I thought was going to be just sort of a modest crowd turned into this enormous turnout. And he said to me, he said, "Wow," he said, "you're really good at setting up these talks. Would you like to be my road manager?" Wow. So who am I to blow against the wind, so to speak? And so I became Ram Dass's road manager for a while. And he introduced me to his yogi teacher, who was a silent Himalayan monk. And I tried to get to India, but because of my South African passport, I was not able to. They wouldn't give me a visa. But I found out that this silent yogi was coming to California. So I wrote to him, and he invited me down to California, and I met him at Sea Ranch, in fact. You might know Sea Ranch. And he was staying with the professor from University of California at Davis. And so began a relationship that went on for the next 10 years. Wow. And he introduced me to my wife, and we got married. We had first one kid, then another. We co-founded, my wife and I co-founded this yoga community in Vancouver called Dharmasara that began to flourish. But after about 5 years of doing that, things kind of went sour, and we went to visit my wife's parents in Massachusetts. And basically, we decided not to go back to Vancouver. And we were publishing some books at the time. We had published, I think, 4 or 5 books at that particular juncture. We were still young. It was kind of amazing that we'd gotten these books published, but we did. And not that we were making a lot of money, not by any means. not at all. But we had managed to get these books published. So we were sort of living as poor authors, if you will. And someone told us about Amherst. He said, you should go to Amherst. Amherst is a good place. They've got a good school system there for your child. And check out Amherst. So we did. And it turned out, yeah, it was a good school system. And we settled in Amherst. And one day I was walking shortly after we had arrived there. I was walking in a cemetery. And an old guy, he must have been well into his 70s, late 70s, I think, with glasses and kind of looked kind of like a little owl, actually. He came up to me in the cemetery and he said, "You're new here, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, we just moved in a few weeks ago." And he said, "Yes, I've seen you." He says, "My name's Roy." He says, "I'm your next door neighbor." He says, "What do you do?" So I told him that we were, basically starving artists, starving authors, and we had a kid and so on. And he said, "Oh, I'd be very interested in looking at your books." So I went home. It was not far away, just a few hundred yards from the cemetery. And I got the book that I was most proud of, the Marriage and Family book. And I brought it to him and he took it. And a couple of days later, we met in the cemetery again. And he said, "Wow," he said, "I'm really impressed." He said, "Have you thought about going back to school?" And I said, "Oh, no, I'm not going back to school now. I had a year and a half of school, college, under my belt at that point." I said, "I can't imagine." I was 33. Can't imagine being with, 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. I cannot even think of it. So he says, no. He says, "I'm thinking about graduate school." And he says, "I'm going to give the dean of the School of Education a phone call." So he gave her a phone call. Next thing I knew, I took the books that I had, a little pile of books, and I went to see the dean. And right away, she said to me, "We'd like to offer you a teaching assistantship and entry into the master's program here. And if you do well, you can go on for a doctorate." So I was like, wow. Suddenly my life had taken a very radical change.
Yeah.
So I went on, I did the master's degree. I saw I could do it. I had tremendous, from my schooling in South Africa and from my general upbringing, the punitive nature of it, I had a very, very poor self-image. And I did not think that I was really, how shall I say, college or never mind graduate school material, but I kept doing really well, getting A's, and my teachers were like very impressed and all that. So I began to slowly, my self-image began to change, and eventually I got the doctorate. And on the morning that I actually got my doctorate, I had to get Form 10, it was called, had to be signed. Once that was signed, you were officially a doctor. So got Form 10 signed. I was now a doctor. I was over the moon with happiness, and I couldn't quite believe that this had happened to me, honestly, even though I had worked very, very hard for it. And I said, my dad, and I had been estranged from my dad for 16 years at that point. We hadn't had any contact. And so I decided I'll call him in South Africa and I'll just tell him, to heck with the formalities of the situation. I'll just tell him, and I know he'll be happy. So I called South Africa, and his secretary said, "Sorry, your dad's in the U.S. on a business trip."
Wow.
Now, this in itself was absolutely stunning, because my father was one of these people that he never left home hardly. So it was a real kind of one of these, I guess you'd call it kismet moments, where the universe kind of intercedes in some way, and you're suddenly on a very different track. So I called my dad up and told him who it was, and he was, of course, shocked. And he said, "Look, I'm coming to," he was in LA. Yeah. He said, "I'm coming to New York. Why don't we meet in New York?" And by then I had a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old and a 3-year-old. So we went down to New York. My wife, he had never met any of us except, of course, me. And we met my dad. And at one point, he was remarried. And at one point, his wife and my wife and the kids took off, and my dad and I were finally left there. And I said to him, "Dad, I've got a lot of sort of hang-ups about what happened when I was a kid. I want to talk to you about all of that." He said to me, "If you want to have a relationship with me, it's going to have to be begin right now, today, from this day forward, but I'm not prepared to talk about the past.
Yeah.
So I had a choice to make. I thought to myself, and by then, of course, I had a doctorate in psychology. So I was like, wow, I'm not going to be able to process this. What about all the stuff that I've learned about processing and how it's possible to have a reconciliation? Both parties can kind of see how it is for the other person in an empathic sort of way, and we can sort of make peace and go on from there. I thought at least I would have some of that ritual, but no, I had no ritual. I had a decision to make that whatever issues I had, I would have to face myself in myself. And so began a 15-year journey with my dad. And it actually turned out to be, as adults, we got along very well.
That's great.
And he cared about me and he loved me. And he had been a pretty sick puppy when I was a kid. And now he was remarried, and the kids from the second marriage were in far better shape than I had been. And they reported to me that, he was not the same man.
Hey,
So-
Michael, we're going to time out here. Zoom's
Okay.
going to time us out. This is fascinating. I could talk to you all day, Michael.
Yeah.
Where can we get the book?
You can get the book at Amazon, of course. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million.
And I feel like I haven't got the end of the story, but I'm going to go
You
to
haven't
the book.
gotten the end of the story, but that's okay.
I'm going to read the book and get to the end of
All
the
right.
story. And then I hope you could come on again. This is just fascinating. I have a million questions for you.
Yeah, all right. That would be great.
Living in Israel and all that, and ended up in Amherst, Massachusetts. What a tremendous story. I'll give you a moment. I cut you off there. Any last thoughts you want to share with our viewers about the book, or anything you
I
want to
think,
talk
it's
about?
one, if I may just sort of brag a little bit here for
Sure.
a moment. It's won 7 awards, 7 literary awards, which I'm very gratified about, and gotten absolutely wonderful reviews. So I do encourage anybody that's curious out there, take a chance. It's a people have remarked that it's a very well-written book, if I say so myself.
Yeah.
Take a chance on it. It's an interesting story for sure, and it's a true story.
True story, yes. Hard to believe it's all true, but that was a
Yes.
tremendous story. Michael, you honor us by coming on the show, and I hope you'll come back again and again.
Certainly.
And for our viewers, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with another author right after this. Welcome back to Briggs on Books, our international talk show where we talk to authors from all over the world about their books, about their lives, about their ideas, etc. Our next guest has been here before, Peter Riva. Welcome, Peter.
Hey, hi, Mike. How are
I know you write science fiction, kind of AI. Well, I'm going to ask you about that in a few minutes. And also you have some books about Africa and things like that. But tell our viewers where you are now.
I live in southwest New Mexico on Apache lands, a little town called Gila, and it's, if you ever saw the movie Stagecoach with John Wayne,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
pretty much where I live.
That's at Gila. Yeah,
Yep.
and a lot of wildlife out there.
Oh yeah, 3.5 million acres of the Gila wilderness abut my land, and so we get everything from bears to 1/3 of all the bird species in North America come through here, snakes and coyotes and wolves and foxes and javelinas, you name it, we've
Yeah.
got it, and it's wonderful.
And you see them.
Living out in the wilderness reminds me of East Africa. We first came here because we were on holiday, and I wanted to see. Grew up being an aficionado of the westerns, and I wanted to be in Apache lands. And when I got here, I suddenly realized I felt at home. It reminded me of the Ngong Hills of East Africa, and we were lucky enough to acquire a small piece of land here and built a holiday home, and then subsequently moved here. When you're out with nature and with wildlife, it's not nearly as threatening as people think. Just keep your wits about you, and it reattaches you to what being alive is all about.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I enjoyed writing so much about Mbuno, who's really the hero of all my books, along with Pero Baltazar, who's the television producer, sort of quasi-mimicked after my own experiences making 78 one-hour television shows in the wild around the world. Mbuno really was a man of nature. He was in tune with nature. He used to say that his because there was a real person called Mbuno, and my character Mbuno in my books is based on him and the tales of his father. Sort of combined the two in one.
Did you live in? Did you live in Africa?
Say again?
Did you live in Africa?
Oh, I traveled there many times. The first time in Africa, I was 16 in 1966. And then I spent a lot of time in the 80s and 90s in East Africa, and other countries there, doing filming and wildlife stuff. I had a client called Peter Beard who was an adventurer, and I used to sort of have to go and take care of filming projects and commercials and things like that we were making together.
Yeah, amazing. What a great life you had, and you're still having it, still writing and writing. I couldn't believe, I was just looking on Amazon how many books you have. How many are out there, Peter?
Well, principally there are the 5 African stories. I've got 2 more written, and I've got the 2 science fiction books, and I have another one of those written, and we're working on editing that. On top of that, my grandmother's Marlene Dietrich, so I handle all that business as well, including books on her and taking care of film and documentary projects.
Now, I think this is your most recent book. Is it Elephant Safari?
It is. It takes place, our heroes, Mbuno and Pharaoh, had some rather testing experiences, thwarting a terrorist situation with kidnapped schoolgirls down in Tanzania. And so we find them, as the story opens, having a restful holiday up north in Kenya on the shakes of Lake Turkana, or it used to be called Lake Rudolph. And they decide to do a walking safari with Nancy Brightman, the camera woman that they used before, and just the 3 of them wanted to reconnect with nature and film while they're going along, following a herd of elephants. Elephants migrate fairly extensively in East Africa, and the ones northern Kenya migrate along the Omo River up into Ethiopia. I've done the walk myself, and it's really quite a wonderful thing because the landscape changes pretty dramatically from the arid top of Lake Rudolph. As you get along the Omo River, you get into fairly dense vegetation, and the elephants up there are like none other. They're really quite. They're not as big, but they're quite strong and move quickly, but highly intelligent for some reason. And so Mbuno and Pharaoh are doing this walking safari, and of course Pharaoh, being a television guy, says, "Hey, listen, Nancy, will you film it so maybe I can sell this to TV and make some money?" So they're filming along, and unfortunately they stumble upon a poaching operation. Mbuno's, and this is true of the man Mbuno himself, if something is vermin or somebody is vermin, he has no hesitation in exterminating them. And so Mbuno takes it upon himself to stop these poachers who have already slaughtered 1 elephant for the tusks, and were about to slaughter the rest of the herd with AK-47s. And therein the race is on to whether Pharaoh and Mbuno can get the rest of the herd to safety away from the poachers. And that's really the basis of the story. It gets a little more complicated later on because Pharaoh, being a television producer, he has in his head, he's got a lot of information. He also happens to be a runner for the State Department or the CIA when they have some little favor to ask him to do when he's traveling so much, carry something, talk to somebody, pass some information. And so he has contacts there, and he starts doing the mathematics in his head on how much money these poachers are making. 25,000 elephant in Ethiopia have been taken in the 10-year period, and that represents about $4 billion of revenue that is all passing into the hands of Al-Shabaab and ISIS. And so it becomes almost an anti-terror. A lot of people don't understand this. It's not just horrible that they're killing elephants for their tusks, but that money almost entirely goes to the Islamic nutcases out there who want to overthrow governments. And so Pharaoh passes information on to the State Department, who then, of course, with a heavy hand, are going to do something and he decides he wants to do something else. And Mbuno's answer is, why don't we just kill them all? And that's not quite what the State Department wants to do. So it's a thriller in the end.
Yeah.
It's a geopolitical thriller. It involves the Chinese, unfortunately, and the Iranians and the Iranian Supreme Guard. And that all takes place in the apt end of the book to bring it to a happy conclusion.
Nice. Now, you, of course, these books are novels. They're made-up stories, but there seems to be a lot of, would you say, truth in them, things that are happening in the real world?
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm a news junkie. I sleep at night with an earpiece in, very much like this one. Mm-hmm. And I listen to radio stations around the world. I listen to Radio Suisse Romande. I listen to East African radio. I listen to Deutsche Welle, the French radio, TF1. BBC, of course, China News, and I pick up bits and pieces of information. Mm-hmm. Also, you have to understand that when you are producing things on the field in foreign countries, you tend to see a different perspective of reality and what's really going on. The elephant poaching has been presented to the world as a terrible thing because the elephants are really wonderful creatures and they should be saved and so on. But there's another real story there that nobody wants to talk about because I guess it's not sexy to say, hey, they kill the elephants, sell the tusks to people who hang them up in their living room in Arabia somewhere, and that money goes straight to Al-Shabaab or Al-Qaeda. And that, to me, always seemed to be a part of the story that was missing, so that's what I concentrated on in this story as a motive for the desire by Mbuno and Pero to break up this trafficking ring of slaughtering elephants.
As you're talking, I've been putting up some of your other book covers, also Africa stories. So I know you're picking up these tidbits from the news.
And do you do a lot of it you see on the ground, I'm afraid.
Do you also do a lot of research?
Yes, I do. I know a lot of the people involved in the governments in East Africa and some of the people, international policing things, because as a literary agent, I'm in touch with a lot of people in different disciplines. Mm-hmm. In my first book, Murder on Safari, a lot of that was centered on the movement of terrorists into East Africa and the trials that take place dealing with well, to give you an example, on one of our shoots, we were doing scouting and we were down along Lake Victoria, and the UN team down there asked if we could give them a half day or a couple of days of labor if we were down there before filming started, and I agreed. Mm-hmm. I thought they just wanted us to do some logistics for them. And actually what they wanted us to do is to go down to the shore and help them pull dead bodies and body parts out of Lake Victoria that the Hutu and other people have been slaughtering in Rwanda. And so, when you're that close to some of the destruction of humans on humans, you learn from it, you learn where the real pressures are and what's really going on. A perfect example of that is in Ethiopia. You may remember the world sang a song, "We Are the World, We Are the People," and all that, and raised money for the famine in Ethiopia, which was a good idea. The problem is, they shipped all this rice to the docks in Addis, and that was fine. But the government in Ethiopia was so broke they didn't have any diesel for a truck. So all this rice was sitting on the docks, and it was all going to rot. So the government took it upon themselves to sell some of the rice, and immediately the world said they're all corrupt, they're selling the rice. Well, they were selling the rice to buy diesel fuel to put in the truck to be able to take the rice, what rice was left, to the people who were starving to death. Amazing. The real picture of what goes on, sometimes you can only find out if you're in the place, seeing it firsthand. And so that's what I like to do in my book. I put a lot of information in there of real people, and the refugee camp that's in northern Kenya is one of the most depressing places you could possibly imagine on this planet. And it's just, it's poorly controlled and bad and sorely corrupt. But what else are they going to do with these refugees who have nowhere else to go? And so I put that in the book as, yes, it's a plot device in my book, but the reality is there.
We always go way over time, but you're just fascinating, Peter. Before we're totally out of time, I put up some of your other book covers. Some books I don't have here, the covers are your science fiction. I just want you to add a note on those. What are those about, and
Well, the path is all about humanity has decided that these computers that they have tried to teach to think like human beings, AI, are starting to run the systems, the weather systems and the food supply systems and transportation. And all of that's being run for humanity's benefit so that people could have a vocation as opposed to a job. You can do what you want because everything is taken care of and it's utopia. And the problem is that our hero, his job is to try and infect the AI system, it's called the system, with a little bit more humanity by tricking it and then making repairs and then showing how it made the mistake. Sort of humanize the thing by little glitches and jokes. And unfortunately, what he does is he spanks the thing into self-consciousness and it comes alive. And he has to either run for cover, or he's got to decide that now that the baby is born, he better make sure that it's raised properly. And that sets in motion a whole series of events, which actually is sort of tragicomic in a way, and the path is quite uplifting at the end of the day.
Yeah. As I said earlier, your books seem to have a lot of truth in them, so including that one. So it's
you just grab bits and pieces, you know. I don't want to go into detail, but the path has a lot of good science in it and real behavior. For instance, the Army was developing a robot and they wanted to make sure the robot would behave more like a human being, so they had a human being encode it with his own thoughts and his own parameters, and the first thing that robot did was want to kill the human being.
Peter, where can we get your books?
Oh, anywhere, you know, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, any bookstore. You can find them e-books online all the time at Open Road Media. They have all of them listed there. And quite often they do wonderful specials. The e-books, I love e-books. I mean, when you can pick up an e-book on special at $2.99, why not? Just enjoy it.
Enjoy it, yeah. Now, we also have your website on the screen, peterriva.com.
Yep, it tells a little bit about me, and there's some links on where you can get the books.
Get the book. And by the way, I just went to Amazon. I don't push one site over another. I type Peter Riva, boom, it's up. I read all about you, saw all of your books, so it's very handy. So they're out there.
And what I'm most proud of, besides this one here, which I think is really a great story, it's the first story of Mbuno on his own. But I was very happy with Sightseeing, a Space Panorama that I did in the early 80s. We worked with NASA and we found 175,000 handheld images that had been taken in space that nobody had printed before.
Wow.
And so we made a small book, only 200 images, and we did an exhibit at the Air and Space Museum. And the astronauts ever since have been my friends because they always wanted to see the pictures they took, but nobody would let them see them.
Nobody, yeah. Amazing. That's amazing. Peter, we're way past time. Any last thoughts? Anything you want to share with our viewers that we brushed over?
You know, it's a great thing to talk to authors and everything, but what authors really want more than anything else, please feel free. Write to me, talk to me, tell me what you think. If you think something could have been better or different, let me know. I really enjoy the feedback.
You like the feedback. That's good to know. It's good to know. I always try to review, you know, at least put a few stars down or write a little blip on every book I read, so I encourage our viewers to do that, or go to Peter's website and tell him what you think in person.
I appreciate it. You know, people don't realize that Amazon only prioritizes books that have a lot of reviews.
Wow.
If you don't have reviews, Amazon just, you know, they have them on their computer, but it doesn't cost them anything, and the books don't shift. What works is when people take a couple of minutes, like this, didn't like it, 2 stars, 5 stars, whatever they want, but that feedback changes the algorithm that Amazon uses to promote a book. Same thing with Barnes & Noble, same thing with Books A Million, all of them. They're all dependent on the reader's feedback, good reads, and so on.
I did not know that. That's good to know.
If authors can get that, that's a big bonus to us.
All right. Our guest is Peter Riva, all the way from New Mexico. And appreciate I'd love to talk to you. We could talk for hours, but they only gave us
Mike.
10 minutes or so. So thank you, Peter, for coming on the show, and hopefully you'll be back in a month or so.
It'd be great. Thanks, Mike.
And for our viewers, don't go anywhere. We're going to have another author right after this. Welcome back to Briggs on Books, our international talk show where I talk to authors from all over the world countries from all over the world. We've been talking to France and Spain and Canada, of all places, and it's the best job in the world. It helps me pick books, and I hope that by you watching the show, it helps you pick your next book. By the way, check out this book. I put it the wrong way. The Reaper by Bob Young. And I think we have Bob here, by the way. Bob comes on our show from time to time. Here he is. Rob, do I say it right? Jung? Is that right, Rob?
Young. Pronounce the J like a Y.
Yeah, I'm making it more difficult than it is. Bob Young. And Bob's latest book, which we just had on the screen here, it is The Reaper, has come out in an audiobook. And our guest with Rob is Steve Hendrickson, who did the audio. Do I have all the facts straight so far?
Sounding good.
Rob, tell us first a little bit about the book.
Well, the book is actually, it's unique in that it's two novellas under one cover, or now under one audio. But it starts out, the first half of the book is set in 1937 at the Paris World Exposition, and it's really centers around a painting that went missing at the end of the World Exposition, a painting by an artist named Joan Moreau called The Reaper in English. That's all the true historical basis of the book. So the first part of The Reaper is the story of all the competing interests who wanted to get their hands on that painting in 1937. That painting actually disappeared and has never been found. That also is historically true. And then the second half of the book, we fast forward to 2009, and the story becomes how that same missing painting now becomes a focal point of an ongoing struggle between a young artist and his estranged mother. And so the story, that's where the story carries forward. And The Reaper is, in fact, the first of a trilogy.
Okay. Now, Rob, I ask this of every author because I just can't see that well. I just have almost stopped reading books because my eyesight gets so bad, and it's very difficult. I always say, when is it going to come out in an audiobook? So I don't know if you did this because of me or if it was your plan. You had an audiobook made. Tell us about the process to get that done.
Well, that's a better question for Steve than for me. He's the genius behind the audiobook. I just happened to have a book around that he liked well enough to do, and so I'll leave the answer to that question to Steve.
Steve?
Sure. Well, Rob and I met. There's a organization in the Twin Cities called Sisters in Crime, which is an authors support group. And they meet monthly, I believe, and they sort of talk about what they're writing. There's usually someone who reads something, and they talk and critique it, and they have guest speakers. And I reached out to them and said, I kind of do audiobooks, and mysteries are always a popular thing. So last summer, I went and spoke to them and met Rob there, and he passed along this book, The Reaper, and I read it and really liked it. So we formed a partnership, and The Reaper just went on sale about 3 weeks ago.
Nice.
And it's slowly appearing on all the major distribution platforms, which each one of them is different, and they take their time, but it's getting out there.
Now tell me about your
again?
preparation to do the audiobook. Did you rehearse it? Did you read it over and over, or did you just open it up and read it?
I generally read it twice. I read it the first time to just get a general sense of the book. In Rob's case, I kind of read it 3 times because I read it the first time and thought, oh, this could be cool. Then I read it a second time, and that's where I'm I'm doing a number of things. I'm formatting it into the format I prefer to read from, and marking important ideas, descriptions of characters, and also flagging for any grammatical errors or other nits that kind of that can sometimes slip past an editor. There's no better way to discover all the structural faults of your book than to have somebody read it out loud.
Read it out loud, yeah.
I make a list of those and pass them on to Rob and say, should we do this? Should we do that? And then I generally read it a third time to kind of really get a sense of what's going on, who are the major characters, where are the conflicts, and then I just start, and I tend to I've just turned 70, so I'm my my endurance is not what it used to be. I used to be able to narrate about 6 hours a day, and now I find I can really only maybe do 2-3 hours. Yeah. And then I just get tired, and my circulation starts to complain. So I just I do about so it comes down to maybe like a chapter a day. Although Rob writes very short chapters,
nice.
So a couple of chapters each day, and there's a service I subscribe to, an artificial intelligence service that listens to my audio and compares it to the text and flags
nice
mistakes that I make. I paraphrase something, or I omit a word, or I drop something, and so that gives me a list of mistakes that are called pickups.
Pickups.
And then I do the pickups. I go back and I sort of add in the right word or phrase or the right pronunciation. And then it's mastered, and then it goes to the publisher.
And by the way, you are the first, I guess you'd say, voiceover artist, or I don't know what you call the craft, but you're our first. So I got a billion questions. They don't they don't give us that much time. But Billy, do you go to a studio for this, or you have
I'm sitting in my home studio.
Home studio, right?
When I decided I wanted to, I've been a professional actor in the Twin Cities for over 30 years. And my wife retired from teaching, and I decided, I think I'm kind of mostly done with acting on stage. I did do a show last fall, but for the most part, I thought, I think I want to slow down. And audiobooks seemed to be a kind of a nice second act.
Yep.
So when we downsized, we bought a condominium that had this huge walk-in closet, storage room, that I converted to a sound studio. So
nice.
This is where I do the work.
Yeah, and you work at your own pace, I guess, that way.
Yes, when I'm producing, when I'm also the producer, yes, I work at my own pace. I also work for other producers.
Yeah.
I've done books for Penguin Random House and HarperCollins and Scribner and Macmillan and all of the big audiobook publishers. And then you're kind of on their clock. But yes, this was a self-produced project.
Now, on your end, are there a lot of choices? I mean, character voices, or one I've listened to many audiobooks where the reader really brings to life different characters and different voices. Is that something you do?
Sometimes, yeah. That's one of the reasons you really want to read the book first.
Yeah.
I there have been cases, not me, but there have been cases where someone has read an entire book voicing a character one way, and in the last chapter it's revealed that this character is Scottish. And
Yeah.
now I have to go back, I have to go back and change everything.
Do the whole thing. Now,
So yeah, generally as part of the agreement, I do what's called the first 15, and I basically say to Rob, you pick, whatever sections of the book, up to about 15 minutes of audio that you want to hear, and I'll do them, and then you can let me know. Do you like the sound of this? Do you like the sound of that? Yeah. And so the author does get a chance to weigh in on the choices.
Yeah. And Rob, when you're writing the book, I would imagine that the characters have certain voices in your head. How did it come out when Steve finished it? Did he come close to what you were writing?
I think Steve improved on what was in my head.
Nice.
I usually write with actual live characters in mind. I'm casting my book as I'm writing it, and Steve did a marvelous job of when I had it casted correctly. He was spot on, and when I didn't, he changed it for the better. So
for the better.
He's the casting director as well as the voice of the Reaper.
Yeah, and that's where my questions were kind of leading. What kind of approval process, or I guess, Steve, you said you read about 15 minutes for the author, and the author would then make choices and say, yeah, this is good, or that voice is good, or you're doing great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of back and forth at first.
Right. The first 15 is, and that's why I leave it up to the author to make the selection of what parts of the book do you think are important for you to hear. And the first 15 is really the last chance for the author to weigh in. After that, the audiobook kind of becomes my baby.
Yeah.
And unless there are really, really serious and valid objections to choices at that point, it's
I guess it can always be edited. You get through it and they say, "Hey, you left out a
well,
whole
it can, but
page here,"
that's additional time, and that's additional time.
Yeah.
And in the audiobook business, like all others, time is money.
Yeah.
So the agreement basically allows for some adjustments, but not a lot. I mean, so it's I try to make it very clear that the first 15, this is your shot. This is your chance to
say, I don't like your voice, or something like that.
That's never happened to me, but that has happened.
Okay. It's better to find out in advance.
You know what?
Anyway.
If that's the case, then we can shake hands and say good luck and drop the project there, and nobody's out a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
But once you sort of sign off on the first 15, then the sort of the book leaves the purview of the author.
Yeah.
And sort of enters the purview of the narrator.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to, as an avid, I say I read books, but I'm listening to them. And as an avid listener of audiobooks, now I've seen you, and I know, Rob, I can't wait to dig into this book and listen to it. So it'd be exciting to kind of the backwards process, see you first and then listen to the book. That'll be a fun way to do it. Steve, what if someone wants to reach you and have you do their book for them?
They can reach me through my email is can I put it in the notes, or in the do we have a
You could send it to me later. I'll add it here on the screen, and we'll have it that way. I could copy and paste. I'm not in the same room as my Zoom computer. So, Rob, so I guess you're saying, Rob, that you turned out great. You're happy with how it came out, and you're happy with the voice.
I think the lesson for anybody who is doing any author who is having his first or wants their first book turned into audio, is to get someone who is experienced, someone who has done books, has been the audio voice of books in your genre or similar genres, and who has proven through the course of their work that you don't have to worry about either the quality of their work or their ethics.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest lesson for anybody to take away from this. Yeah. And Steve is the best in my opinion.
That's great.
So that's if you can contact him. He's a great man to work with, and he's a great voice.
I just put my email in the chat.
Okay, perfect.
So
now I like something you just said, Rob, about making sure in advance. I talked to, of course, thousands and thousands of authors over the years on this show, and so many of them had made mistakes and taken a wrong path and had to figure out the hard way. So hopefully people will listen to you, Robin, because this could be a big one. If you get an audiobook done and you just don't like the voice, or you found out the person had a lisp or something like that, you find out in advance. So go with a professional like Steve Hendrickson. Steve Hendrickson. I could talk to you guys all day, but they're telling me we've gone way past our time. But this is fascinating. I just want to give you a minute, Rob or Steve. Any last thoughts on this issue or the industry or anything you want to talk about?
Well, no, audiobooks is one of the biggest growing sectors of publishing, and it's looking like it's not going to slow down anytime soon.
And the only thing I want to say in closing is, hey, look for the Reaper at your regular audiobook site, and it will be there. And we are embarking on book 2 of this trilogy.
That is
soon, and so soon the Sower, which is book 2, will follow.
Very good. And for our viewers, I'll say my last thought is go get this book. And I don't know how they do it, but my kids send me audiobooks. So if you're a regular buyer of audiobooks, you probably know how to do that. But don't just buy it for yourself, buy it and send it to somebody else as well. Thank you, gentlemen. Our first, tell us the industry. Is it voice over? Is it narrator? How do you like it to be called, Steve?
Audiobook narrator.
Audiobook narrator. Our first audiobook narrator on the show. And
thank you, Michael.
What an honor.
All right. Thanks, you guys. And for our viewers, again, order the book. Audio. You don't have to do it on audio if you don't want, but I think it's going to be more fun now that we know the audiobook narrator. And for our viewers, we'll be back with more Briggs on Books, another author, right after this. Welcome back to Briggs on Books, our international talk show where we talk to authors from all over the world. And we've talked to authors today from England, Istanbul, Canada, all over the world so far. And if you're getting ready to pick your next book, or if you're ready to help your kids pick the next book, check this one out. Joey Kelly and the Astonishing Discovery of Veiled Lake. It's going to be an exciting book. By the way, not only do I have the book here, but I have the author here. Let me see if I can find him. There he is. Robert Ravigna. Welcome, Robert.
Hey, I'm glad to be here and glad to be able to talk a little bit about the book.
Yeah. Now, we were talking before the show started. It's written for 9 to 12 or whatever, but older kids like it. Even adults are liking the book.
Yeah, if I have the feeling that if they decided to do a extended Indiana Jones series and wanted to start off on a reboot, then this might have been the book that they start with, because it starts out with 4 teen archaeologists. The youngest is 15 and a half, and the oldest is 16 and a half. And they do pretty much everything that Indiana Jones does, except maybe a little bit better, and certainly more relatable to young children.
Yeah.
So they go on incredible adventures. They save individuals during the book. They come back alive. And I've already started on the sequel when they return to this fantastic hidden lake that they discovered. And the good thing about the book is if you have a son or a daughter that like archaeology, and this would be a book that gives them a little bit more information about archaeology. It teaches them some of the things you have to do to be a good archaeologist. It describes how you do a dig site, but all in a fun way. It's just like the mythology part.
Yeah.
One of the things I tried to do was make it educational and funny. I mean, that was my goal. Basically, I have 9 grandchildren.
Yeah.
I started to write this book when my first granddaughter was about 7 years old. She's 18 years old now. And so I started to write it, and some of the names of the characters are the same as my grandkids. The personalities are certainly not the same. They're kind of mixed up, but there are personalities of the grandkids in there. And it wound up being a fun book, but I wound up ending it on a chapter about Cyclops. Well, then a couple more grandkids, I had to write a little bit more, and then a couple more grandkids, I had to write a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And then in having people read the book or reading it to the kids, people were saying, this is really good, this is really good. And I say, well, you know what? Maybe I'll try and expand it. I'll expand it to a book for young readers. So from the chapter which ended with the Cyclops, I had to figure out how to add another 27,000 words to the book, and I think it came out really, really well.
Yeah.
And actually, it clears up a lot of things that have been totally wrong through the history of movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure most viewers, and the Titan movies, Clash of the Titans, and you always have Zeus walking down to the water. He puts his staff up above his head, and he says, "Release the Kraken." Well, right in the middle of the book, there's a little funny section because there's a Greek movie being made, and there's a no-name actor coming down dressed as Zeus, and he is supposed to come to the water's edge, raise up his arms, and say, "Release the Kraken."
Yeah.
Well, at the moment he does that, there's an underwater earthquake, and that earthquake releases a hideous sea monster. And so Joey Kelly and the others have been to Veiled Lake once. They see the action because they're filming a movie.
Mm-hmm.
So when this creature comes up out of the water, the cameras are rolling, the sound booms are out, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, the Kraken, the Kraken." So there's a little funny thing where they're talking about it and says, "Well, can't believe that CNN News, the Greeks, and even the U.S. Navy who engaged this creature, and it escapes from the Navy."
Yeah.
Actually, it kind of beats the Navy. But it's like, I can't believe they got it all wrong. And they're like,
Yeah.
"Well, what do you mean got it all wrong?" And it's like, well, would Zeus ever go down to the water's edge and say, "Release the Kraken"? No, because the Kraken was a Nordic sea monster that was first mentioned like around 1280 AD, and Cetus was the Greek sea monster. So what Zeus should say is, "Release the Cetus." So, I mean, it's funny because it's a dialogue, but it has all the characters that kids love,
Yeah.
and all the monsters that kids love. And other than the Kraken, aka Cetus, none of the monsters die. If you read the cover of the book, you read a little bit out, it has Medusa in it. Well, Medusa winds up being the snake monster, but by the end of the book, she is now the young princess that she used to be, and she's ready to be a living encyclopedia, and she goes on to Kids with Other Adventures. Yeah. So I just tried to make it, I certainly tried to make it fun. And I was getting a little tired of all the superheroes that they have now, which have nothing in common with children. Mm-hmm. On LinkedIn a few months ago, I think it was one of the executives from Scholastic Books said, "Kids read more, engage the story, and understand it better if the characters are characters that they can relate to." And I guarantee any reader out there with children from 9 to 16, 18, and if you're adult, you like it, if you read the book, these kids are superheroes, but they're only superheroes because they're smart, they're friendly, they use teamwork, they're self-reliant. They have a little bit of luck, honestly, but who doesn't? I mean, Indiana Jones would be dead about 50 times over if he didn't have some luck. So these kids are kids that parents of most of the readers would say, these kids are just like my kids.
Yeah, that's
it's
great.
2 boys, it's 2 girls, they're best friends. And that's basically how the book starts, that's how the book ends, and then that's how the next series starts. They're relaxing in Holden Beach in North Carolina, waiting to go on the next adventure.
That's great. You think it might inspire some kids to be archaeologists?
I actually hope so.
Yeah.
There's a section in there where they're making repairs because this boat that they're using has taken a beating down there, and they discover the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which it's one of the 10 wonders of the world, but nobody's ever found the remains. Well, the remains wind up being down at this veiled lake that the kids are exploring. And I go into datums, which is one of the points where you have a center point in digging and sifting for archaeological debris, dating by the bricks and how the bricks are done. But again, it's definitely not an educational book. It is in that it's a fun to read book, and the kids hopefully will remember a lot. But it's not like I'm giving a lesson in archaeology.
Yeah.
It's just, ooh, that sounds like fun. I would love to find that. And all the kids in the book have certain things in certain places that they want to find and then do an archaeological dig. And the Hanging Gardens of Babylon would be one of those sites.
Wow.
So yeah, I hope that I inspire some children to take up archaeology as a career. In an extended bio I'm doing on the kids, we find out that the parents are either archaeologists or anthropologists. And so they all have an interest in it, but they all wind up picking the better of the two, which is the archaeology.
Yeah, that's, I call these possibility books sometimes because kids see, oh, it's possible for me to do that. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Easy with the right training.
Yeah.
And my grandson, I did a LinkedIn post not too long ago. There's all over the country, there's archaeological camps. There's one here in New Jersey.
Nice.
They actually bury things, and then a skilled archaeologist comes and shows the kids how to dig, how to sift, how to carefully remove artifacts without damaging them. So from here to California and from Texas to Canada, I'm sure most people have access to a archaeological camp that the kids can do in the summer. And my grandson, Gabriel, who's one of the archaeologists in the book, he's done it several times and loves it.
Yeah, that's fun. We've gone way past time, but you're so fascinated and you're so passionate about your story and these ideas. I want to say that my kids are older than that now. They're in their 30s, but man, when they're that age, I wish we had books like that. And what I would have done, which I'm suggesting to our viewers to do, is don't go to Amazon or wherever you buy your books. Don't just buy one. Buy 10 of these things, because your kids at that age, they go to birthday parties every other week. And it's good to have a stack of books like that to give out, as the birthday gift. Christmas is coming up. Have a stack ready for Christmas. And so don't buy one. That's what I always tell our viewers. Robert,
I guarantee the kids will not want to put it down.
Yeah, and get the kids talking with each other about it because they're all reading the same book. That's fun too. We're past time, Robert. Robert Ravegno, any last thoughts for our viewers about the books or about anything in the world you want to talk about?
Yeah, no, basically, I have freebies on the website. Okay. So anybody out there that's interested, if you're not going to read the book right now, maybe your son or daughter is a little bit young, but it's something that you'd like to see, or you have an older child, on my website. I know I sent some pictures. My daughter has done the artwork. She's a art teacher. She did the Kraken, she did the Cetus, she did the Hydra. She did a fantastic scene where Blackbeard is being attacked by Medusa. So she supplied the artwork, and there's downloadable posters on the website. Yeah. There's fantastic walkthroughs of worldwide museums. The one Greek museum is in a museum that would make Indiana Jones jealous if he could get into that museum. So like I said, there's plenty of free things for the kids to do. And hopefully if they get in there and like the site, they would buy a book. But I just tried to make it as entertaining as possible, both the book and the website.
Very good. And we do have the web address on the screen, Robert Rovegno, author.com. It's not that hard. I was worried about the name, Rovegno, robertrovegno.com. And
you got it.
Thank you, Robert. By the way, this is the first book of how many, do you think?
Oh, what was that?
How many books do you think will be in the series?
I started on the second one, and I actually have 5 early readers, which I'm working on publishing now. Mini action adventure books, Frankie the Frog, and 2 motivational books, and 3 fairy tale books. So those will be coming out soon, and then I'll be contacting you again to be on your show.
Nice. Well, the Joe Kelly series sounds like it's a lot of fun to write.
Mm-hmm. It was definitely a lot of fun to write. With 7 grandkids live in the house with us, so writing is fits and starts. Whenever I have a free moment, I'm writing. When we go to the beach, I go with my wife for 48 years. We go to the beach. Then I write like crazy, and I try and get as much done before I come up here, because then things slow down a bit.
Yeah, I bet. Thank you, Robert. I'm inspired on the show anytime you like.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much.
And for our viewers, don't go anywhere, because we're going to be back with another author right after this. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Briggs on Books, our international talk show where we talk to authors from all over the world about their book and get an idea of what their books are all about. I have the most fascinating guest and the most fascinating book and the most fascinating subject. Check out this book if you're looking for your next read, Spiritual Energy Explained. I've spent years trying to understand spiritual energy, but our next guest is an expert on that. Please welcome Walter Broach. Did I say your name right, Walter Broach?
I'm here.
All right, welcome to you, sir. Tell us, what is this spiritual energy all about?
Okay, this is fantastic. I have, when I was like about 8 years old, they baptized me. Mm-hmm. And shortly after I was baptized, I saw this movie with the hero in it. He died, and there was a picture of his soul flying up to heaven or something like that. And I've been kind of interested in it. What's going on here? And I was in a library. I ran a huge library system. I had 15 libraries a few years ago. And one thing I did is I researched this. I was really curious about what is this kind of energy that flies out of you. And I used to do research and take books home every night and study about whatever this strange, mysterious energy was. And I discovered that the universe is literally made out of invisible energy. I maybe should name these books Invisible Energy, or the Universal Invisible Energy, because the whole universe is made out of energy. And people don't realize that. They just think there's nothing out there. But the air is made out of energy. The earth is made out of energy. You are made out of energy. And when you die, that energy does not die. That energy goes somewhere. It does something. And I have been researching, this isn't religious or anything. I've been researching what happens to that energy that when we drop dead, which I'm 86 years old. I started doing this when I was about 80. I used to write when I was young, and I didn't make much money, so I went into real estate. I made enough money so that I can, you can't live on Social Security anymore. Yeah. So I make a little extra money doing my writing, and I enjoy it. It's fun. It's a hobby. but it's also, I got these books written, and I said, hey, I might as well publish them, and so we published them, and they're selling. That surprised me, but it's fun, and it's nice. I meet a lot of people. They email me, and I always try to respond. Sometimes I don't, but 99% of the time I respond. I like hearing from them, and I like telling them, just talking to them. It's fun.
Yeah.
And so I started writing, and I got a nice, when I started publishing them, I got a nice response. It made me feel good. And so I kept writing, and I have several books out now, and I hope to do about 2 or 3 more. But the whole thing, and I'll tell you, this is good, because when we before we get here, we're energy. And we might be donkeys, we might be trees. I'm about to hit on the final answer to what we do and what we are. That's the big question. And it appears that before we're born, we could be animals, we could be trees, we could exist in other universes or other places of this, whatever it is, heaven, hell, whatever, the fun place. But our energy is there. Energy also has thought. Now, even rocks have, it isn't thought like we have, but they're publishing, they're putting out something. You notice when you see, you look in a forest and you see tree roots, they grow together. They're communicating with each other. Now everything in your body is communicating. Your brain, information comes into your brain. It could be somebody speaking. It could be just air passing through, coming through it's just, whistling by ears, and you're hearing something, or you're experiencing something. That's communication. There was a song once, I don't know, your elbow connects to your knee bone or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but all that your bones and your veins and your body, one part, your fingers communicate with your hand. Your hand communicates with your wrist. It just goes on down, on and on and on. And your brain is just a piece. It's a piece of meat. It doesn't really. The information comes into your brain, and your brain redirects it to where it's supposed to go. The brain isn't really a smart thing. Well, some people are smart and some people aren't so smart, but their brain has an ability to transfer this energy, this universal energy. Now, I call it spiritual energy, but you can call it invisible energy. They really have no name for it except spiritual. So I call the book spiritual energy. But they could be invisible energy, or they could be universal energy. It is this wonderful energy that's throughout the universe, that we pick up our little bit and we forget. When you're first born, you come in and you scream and you yell and you do other things. And I'm getting old. I'm getting to the age where we're close to turning back into like we're children again. We pee, and pardon the expression, and scream and yell and holler, and it's just when we pass on, we're going to go somewhere. Now that is the question, and I'm about to hit on it. but it appears to me that we can go back to being a tree, and people don't understand this. They understand we turn into our souls, and we may reincarnate, and we really can. I have read lots of stories about people who reincarnate. I have never experienced my reincarnation, so I don't know if I reincarnated or not. If I experience, I have had dreams and feelings of past lives. I have had, but I cannot prove it. I can't go back there and say, "Hey, I was there." I have feelings and a lot of children up until about the age of 6 remember past lives.
Right.
They get to 6 or 7 and they begin to forget these past lives, or they get ridiculed about it. You aren't smart. What are you doing those past lives for? Ha ha, that's stupid. And things like that. And so we forget them. I'm not sure yet, and I'm still working on it, but what did we do, or lives before lives? I'm gonna put lives before lives, and in my next book, I'm gonna have the universal laws of spiritual laws. I'm working on how this energy affects us and how we can work with it. We can cooperate it and make our lives more fun and healthier and plan for our future lives. That's what my books mainly are about. What we were before this life, how to make this life happy and prepare for the next life, and to motivate on it, to push on it, to think about it, to say, I know I'm gonna be this, and I want to be this, and that's part of it. Your thoughts are what is going to take you beyond this life. I'm pretty sure of that from what I have studied.
Now you're going to have another book out pretty soon?
Yes, I'm working on it. The laws of spiritual energy, or just the laws of energy, the universal energy laws. I'm not quite sure about the title, but it'll be something like that.
Now let me ask you this, Walter. I'm showing you different book covers. Is there one where people should start? Should be the first one they read? Which one is the best place to start?
Probably about spiritual energy. It's been on the bestseller list. It was a bestseller. It's not a bestseller now. It's going down, 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 because it's kind of old.
Yeah.
It's not that old, but when they first come out is when you hit the bestseller list. Yeah. I was thrilled that I was surprised, and I was thrilled that I don't brag about being intelligent or a good writer or anything like that. And I was surprised that I hit the bestseller list, and about spiritual energy.
Yeah, that's exciting that you had that experience. We're almost out of time, Walter, but who should be reading these books?
Who should be reading them? Mm-hmm. I first wrote them for myself. Uh-huh. Then I ought to be reading for people that are interested in what's out there. Yeah. And what they're going to be, and they're about spiritual energy, and what you're going to do when you die, what's going to happen, and what were you before. It's kind of, life before life and life after life, and what this energy is. I do all three. I would say it's for older people, maybe 35, 40 years old or older, because they're more interested in this type of thing. And I think people that are interested in spirituality want to, and people that go to church. Mm-hmm. It isn't about church, right, but I like people that go to, my daughter is a born-again Christian. Mm-hmm. I'm not a Christian. I don't write about Christianity or anything like that. And it's not about churches. It's not religious. It's about what's out there. And if you want to be religious, that's fine. If you want to plan for your own afterlife, that's fine. If you don't, if you like to read, I think it's a fun book. I'm learning how. I used to write when I was younger. Then I went to work and made enough money so I could retire and live without my Social Security. And so I'm really learning how to write. I'm getting better.
Yep.
So my book, probably Spiritual Energy Explained, or the next one, Spiritual Energy and You, and about spiritual energy, or spiritual energy laws of spiritual. That's going to be the next one. And then the one after that will be the something about spiritual energy. I have named it, but you and your relationship with spiritual energy. And I hope to narrow it down better, that people can understand what is out there and what was before. I hit on it a little bit in the first 3 books, but I'm becoming a better writer. I hate to say that. I'm talking about myself.
Yeah.
But if you write a lot, you get better
You get
at
better,
it.
sure. Well, Walter, we have had a few guests on our show on this subject, but nobody has been as passionate as you or as knowledgeable as you. So I just want to encourage our viewers to go to wherever you buy your books and buy these books. Also visit walterbroach.com. And I think, if we want to ask you questions, Walter, can we do that through your website?
Yeah, well, it's walterbroach.com, and I'm working on it right now. I can't get into it. I don't know why, but I will get into it today or tomorrow, and you can get it there. You can get it on Amazon. You can get all of them on Amazon, about spiritual energy. And what is this one? Spiritual energy. Where is that? Yeah. Hey, look at that. Spiritual Energy Explained. I'm going to change that cover. I don't like it. The publishers published it that way. And, they do that. They're the bosses.
Walter, we've gone way over time, but I sure enjoyed talking to you, and I'd love to have you back anytime you want to come back, because this is a fascinating subject for me, and you make it fascinating yourself.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed our talk. I talked too much.
All right.
And I enjoyed the talk.
All right.
And you ought to have fun. Look, I'm 87 years old.
Yeah.
I thought I'd be dead at 65. I hit 80, and I said, "What am I doing? I'm still alive here.
Yeah.
This is crazy."
All right.
And so then I picked up the hobby of writing again because it's fun.
All right.
And I'm beginning. Their books are getting better.
Good.
And the last one is the last one is Spiritual Energy and You. Mm-hmm. There's where I start getting the beat. It's when you write. When you start writing out, you write like other people.
Yeah.
And now I'm writing like Walter. And I have me into it. And this is just I went through this when I was younger. When I started doing it again, I'm going through it again. Yeah. I'm getting better with every book I write. And all writers do this. And I knew I was doing it because I did it when I was younger. Mm-hmm. It's fun.
Yeah.
I hope people enjoy my books. That's the reason. If they can enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing them, we're going to be even. I mean, it's good. I encourage people to write me if they like. I encourage people, go up to Amazon. You can go on Amazon, you hit Walter Broach, and they'll send you to my books, or you can put Spiritual Energy Explained, or About Spiritual Energy, or Spiritual Energy and You.
Right.
I think that's up there. If it isn't, it will be.
No, it's up there. They're all on Amazon. Walter, we've gone over time because I like talking to you so much. So I want to thank you for coming on the show, and be sure that you know you're invited back anytime you would like.
Hey, I had fun talking to you. I had fun. I talked too much.
No, you're perfect. You're one of the best guests ever. For our viewers, don't go anywhere because we're going to have another author coming up right after this. Welcome back to Briggs on Books, our international talk show where we get to talk to authors from all over the world about their books, what their books are about, how they get their inspiration. Most of all, we hope to find out how they got them actually published, because that's one of the biggest challenges most of our viewers have. Well, are you getting ready to pick the next book to read, or the next book to put in your stack, or maybe a book to give away at Christmas time? Check this one out, Violent, by the author E.N. Chanting. And by the way, not only do I have the book here, if I can find her, I have the author as well. Welcome, E.N. Chanting.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
Now, I know Violent isn't your first book, but is that your most recent?
It is the most recent, and it was actually released with a novella, and the novella is the first part of the story. It's called Origin of Violet, and then Violent is the novel.
Now, am I correct that I saw the novella on Amazon as well?
They are both on Amazon, but the novella, Origin of Violet, readers can pick up for free if they visit my website and sign up for my newsletter.
Yeah. By the way, we just happen to have your website on the screen, E.N. No, that's Instagram, but I'll continue with that. E.N.Chanting_author. That's the Instagram. And the web address is easy, enchantingauthor.com. Did I get it right?
Correct. Yes.
enchantingauthor.com. No periods except for the .com. So, okay.
Yeah.
Start again, because I heard the word free and then I stopped paying attention. But I could go to your website and get the novella, right?
That's correct.
What do you call it? Precursor or something?
Prequel.
Prequel, okay. And then the book itself is, here it is, Violent. Tell us about the prequel. Tell us about the book.
Origin of Violet is when she is a child, and it explains how she becomes the serial killer that she is later in life. It starts when she's 12, and she kills her stepfather, who was abusing her. And then it goes through her life until she has a tragedy. And then Violent picks up after that tragedy, and she sort of decides to take a different path, and she goes on a vigilante justice killing spree, basically. But along the way, she meets some gentlemen who become her friends, and then they fall in love. So that's the romantic part.
Is this one of those where I catch myself doing this all the time? You're rooting for the serial killer because they're actually doing good in society?
That is absolutely the case.
Yeah.
She kills all the bad guys.
Excellent. Excellent. By the way, we talked about it before we came on the air, but tell our viewers what genre you write in.
I write spicy romantic suspense and spicy romantic horror. And I also have a short story that is just horror.
Just horror, okay. Spicy, I guess spicy means what I think it means, so.
Yes.
Means you're writing for men and women now. So,
yes.
I don't want to go too far without touching base on the force. I don't know how to say the word. Force majeure.
Force majeure. Yes. So that's part of my Forces of Nature series. The first book is Force of Corruption, and the second book is Force majeure. Those are an interconnected world, but they are standalone books.
Standalone, yeah. And we have them on the screen here. Just happen to have a copy here. Force of Corruption, that was easy. Tell me what majeure means.
Force majeure is actually a legal term, and it means something that's out of control or like an act of God.
I see.
So,
Okay.
when you have a situation in a lawsuit, that's nobody's fault, really. It's force majeure.
Yeah. By the way, I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm often surprised. Somebody writing about just totally made up things. You still have to do a lot of research.
I do a little bit of research. It's interesting because I happen to know a few experts in some of the fields that I write about. So I just kind of make a phone call most of the time.
Yeah. Now, there are people out there watching. In fact, there's millions of people across the world, because I know because we talk to different countries every day, but people who are writing books but just haven't quite got to the finish line yet. But you've done it several times. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
When you talk about you know experts in some of the fields, do you have people read your books before you put them out, like readers, experts?
I do. I do. I do ARC readers, which is advanced reader copy. So I will offer a free copy of the book to people who will post a review prior to release. And with Force Majeure, I actually had what are called beta readers, where they read the raw story that was unedited and advised me on what they thought would work better or wasn't working.
You get sometimes somebody says, "Oh, you know, you said this here, but it doesn't line up with this over here." Does that happen?
Absolutely. Those are plot holes, and I
plot holes.
request that people seek those out and let me know if they find any.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I call it you can't see the forest for the trees. You read your own work so many times that even misspelled words, you don't see them anymore. So
Exactly.
now, by the way, Violent, I know there's a prequel and then the novel Violent. Will there be another book in that series?
There is. It's actually what I'm calling a duet and a half. The half is the novella. I actually just finished writing Vile, which is the second novel in the series and the finish. After I finish writing a book, I just call it a rest period, where I just put it aside and I don't look at it, so I have fresh eyes when I go back. Like what you were saying, you can't see your own mistakes.
Yeah.
So I want to give it a rest before I read it and adjust things before I give it to my editor.
Nice. Oh yeah, before the editor, because the editor always finds something and you think I should have caught that myself. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, who would you say are your readers mostly?
I would say women for the most part. Men have enjoyed the romantic suspense stories. I had one or two that liked the horror, but they always say there's not enough horror. So, it's more about the romance too, and they don't care about that part. They just want to see the blood and the guts. So, they don't enjoy it as much. But I would say women probably later 20s and beyond.
Yeah, I want to go as far as saying this for men. If you have a woman in your life, she might like this book at Christmas time or holiday season, I should say. Get her the book and surprise her with the novella, the free novella that she'll get with it as well. Does that come as a PDF or you read it on screen? How does that work?
The free PD, it's a download ebook.
Okay. Now, I keep asking this. I don't totally understand the question sometimes, but what formats is your book in? Paperback, ebook, audio?
It is in ebook and paperback. If you buy it from my website, I can send you a signed copy.
Nice.
Or it's available on Amazon, Target, Walmart, all of the big retailers.
Yep. Whenever I can, I always try to order from the author's website. I feel like I have a little relationship with the author that way, and come signed or something, and I really like to do that. Now, the ebook, does that mean Kindle?
Yes. It'll work on your Kindle, or you can even read it on your computer.
On your computer, okay. I might like that better. I'm just having more trouble seeing the words on the page, so I'm looking for different ways that I could add more contrast or something. How about audio? Any sign of audiobooks coming out for you?
I'm actually working with a voice artist who's brand new, and he and I are just kind of playing around with a few recordings. I actually recently just uploaded the first chapter of Origin of Violet. It's on my website with him reading it. He has this wonderful deep voice, but it's funny because it's a female character. but he does a great job.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at audio. It's expensive,
Oh,
but
it is, yeah.
it's fun to play around with it right now.
Yeah, I shouldn't say, I think that's a trick, putting the first chapter up, because every time somebody puts the first chapter up, I end up buying the book. I can't stand not to know what happens after the first chapter. So,
Yeah.
So you said the next in the series of The Violent is coming out, or you finished writing it, so it could be 6 months, a year?
Oh, I plan to have it out in the spring of 2025. I try to be fairly quick to
Yeah.
get them out, especially I didn't leave too much of a cliffhanger at the end of Violent. The end of Origin of Violet is a huge cliffhanger, so that's why I released them simultaneously. I didn't want to leave readers hanging. Violent isn't too bad at the end. You can wait for the next one, but I'm really happy to finish up that series.
Yeah. And again, I'm always pitching these books this season. I'm always picking my next book. Sometimes one thing that helps me is the cover itself. Do you have a great cover, Violent? And by the way, I think this one has the person facing the other way. Watch that. And boom, she turns around. I guess it's a she, yeah. And second, if I kind of feel like I know the author, like I see him in an interview like this or something, that helps me pick the next book. And finally, an author that kind of has a website where I could reach them and get some reaction or something free like the prequel or something. I like that too. So I'm glad you're making yourself that available. Last question for our authors who are writing and trying to get somewhere. What's your discipline? You wake up at 6 a.m. and sit down and start writing?
No, definitely not. I have an autoimmune disease, so I have some days where I just don't feel well. I do a lot of my writing at night. I have trouble sleeping, so I'll sit in bed with my Kindle, actually, and type away for a couple hours when I'm trying to sleep.
Wow, you could type on the Kindle.
Yeah. Well, because I have a lot of trouble with my hands, a lot of the time I'm typing literally with one finger.
Nice.
I just had a huge hand surgery in July.
And by the way, we didn't tell our viewers where you're located. What can you tell us about that?
I'm located just north of Clearwater, Florida, which is near Tampa. And as we were discussing, we were recently hit by 2 back-to-back hurricanes,
Yikes.
and my whole community is struggling to recover from those.
Yeah. Is that area typically get hit by hurricanes, or is that just an unusual thing?
Well, anywhere in Florida can get hit by a hurricane anytime, but this area hasn't been hit in over 100 years.
Over 100 years, yeah.
And when we moved here, I moved here from South Florida, and I was in Hurricane Andrew in Miami. So I was ready, I'm always ready for a hurricane, and we prepare for hurricane season. And when we first moved here, we were renting a house before we knew where we wanted to be specifically. And I asked the renter, what do we do to prepare for a hurricane? And they just laughed and said, we don't get hurricanes here. So I think they probably had to change their story now.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people that had never seen tornadoes are having tornadoes, or hurricanes are hitting, so something's happening out there.
Yeah.
Enchanting. We're way past time, but you're so enchanting I couldn't stop talking. Any last thoughts for our viewers on the books or any subject in the world?
One thing I wanted to tell you, I do have a holiday special right now, a signed copy of Force of Corruption and Force Majeure for $24.99.
Nice.
And I made a special coupon code for your readers, or your viewers, that they will get 20% off if they use this code on my website.
Can you hold it up a little higher? In front of your face, even a little higher. There we go. Anyway, email it to me as well, and I'll put it right on the thing.
It's Briggs20.
Yeah. Great guest, Ian Chanting. You're so easy to talk to, and I'm inspired by your work and your volumes of work, and I hope you'll come back on the show again and again.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
We'll be back with another author right after this.
Hello, this is Hope Roski with Business, Arts, and Events. Well, are you looking for that special holiday gift? Because I know some of you viewers are. Well, if you are and you're looking that jewelry, look no further than the vault. I'm here with owner Gary Yervin. Gary, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. What a pleasure it is to be here, and I think we're going to have a nice time chatting and enlightening our viewers is just what we do.
Absolutely. One of the things that I really like about when I walk into the vault, it's very welcoming. And you're located in Fig Garden Village, which is on the corner of Palm and Shaw, centrally located
Yes,
in Fresno. And I really, when you walk in, it's just like you're greeted with warmth, with friendliness. It's easy to view your items. So tell the viewers a little bit about what they can expect when they come in.
Well, when you come in, we really pay attention to the needs that you have and what you're looking for. We try to ask questions as to the type of ring you might want or the gift you're looking to purchase for that special occasion. But everything matters to us. We really care about our customers, and we really are very much connected to what they're there for, and we want to provide that service. We want to make you feel at home, whatever it is you're looking for, whatever it is you want to buy. We certainly don't want to make you feel uneasy. We want that feeling that there's no pressure, and we're there to just serve you as our customer, and that's what we do.
And how many years have you been in business?
Yeah, I would, just looking back, about 40 years.
Oh my goodness! Well, see, that says a lot about you and your wife, beautiful wife,
yes,
Elaine.
Yes. Couldn't have done it without Elaine. Very special. She's been by my side the whole time, and we've worked together hand in hand. And what a wonderful, wonderful story it's been. It's like just like living a dream.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, you know, we're coming up on the holidays here,
Yes.
and people are frantically looking for something to buy for that special somebody in
Yes.
their life. And, you know, holidays sometimes bring engagements. It's like that special gift underneath the tree.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the diamond area here and the different types of options people have now in affordability.
Sure.
So in today's world, you have what I call the natural diamond
Yes.
from the mines, and then you have lab diamonds,
Yes.
which are made in a controlled environment. Can you tell the viewers a little bit about the similarities, yet the differences?
So when you're looking at a natural diamond versus the lab-created diamond, you really can't see a difference. I mean, I can't tell unless we send it for testing, or we have a tester that'll let us know that it's lab-created.
Mm-hmm.
So it really does serve a purpose depending upon your budget and what you want to spend. We do sell a lot of natural diamonds as well, and for that special bride that you're willing to give that to, it's just a matter of your choice.
Right, and I think, you know, when you talk about, you know, people in today's society may be on the budget,
Yes.
and they still want that ring that shows
Yes.
and it pops.
Yes.
So let's say somebody wants to get like a 3-carat natural diamond. About how much would that run in a round?
You could spend $30,000, $40,000.
Wow, okay, so if they opted to go with one from the lab, a 3-carat from the lab, what would that?
You know, $5,000-$6,000.
Wow, what a significant
Tremendous
difference.
difference.
And yet I know to a lot of people, to the naked eye, they cannot tell
Cannot tell.
the difference. It still has that bling, it still has that shimmer,
Yes.
which is great. One of the things that I really like about your store is that people come in and, you know, with different fingers and rings. You do special kind of moldings if you're doing a custom ring. How does
Absolutely.
that work?
You know, we'll create a design for them that they want to look at. So they let us know what their tastes are and the styles, and so we'll put that together with the CAD, and then we'll grow the wax, and we'll present that to the customer. It doesn't cost them anything.
Oh, that's great.
And if they like it, we'll cast it, and we'll tell them what the price would be. Or if they want changes, we'll make as many changes as they want until we get just what they like.
Oh,
And that's what we
excellent.
do. I mean, it really is very satisfying to be able to make that person feel like you're treated above and beyond, and that's what we do.
That's great. Well, one of the things I noticed here in the studio we've been staring at right here are these little precious babies right here. Tell us a little bit about the special drawing that you're having.
So on December 24th, we're going to be giving away a pair of diamond earrings. That's total 1 carat, and those are natural diamonds, and the value of that is $3,000 retail value. And some lucky person will win that this holiday season. There's no purchase necessary. You just come in, fill out your name and phone number, and we'll draw it, and we're going to give it away.
Wow.
And that's what we want to do.
That sounds
kind of give back.
Yeah. And you know what? I know that you do quite a bit because
Sure.
I have come to you before with different charity affiliations, and you've always been so good about giving back to the community. Truly exceptional. One of the other things too is when you walk into the jewelry store, because it can be overwhelming.
Yes.
You have different designers, people who are known for certain types of looks, like David Yurman and other types of people. Who are some of the designers that you carry within your jewelry store?
You know, we have Roberto Coin in there, which has been very popular. That's a very beautiful designer line from Italy. And then we have Shy Creation, which has won many awards. We also carry Gabrielle and Company. Very nice designs that are very affordable. So, you know, we try to have something for everyone. And I never want to make that person feel like they can't afford something. If you would like it, we'd love to sell it to you. But we don't want to make you feel like, you know, this is something I shouldn't buy or I can't afford. So we've got something for everyone who really wants to buy that special gift for that special person.
Do you have certain payment plans or options
We
for
do.
people?
Yeah, we offer 1 year no interest through 2 different banks, and it's very quick and easy, and that way they can spread it out over 12 months with no interest. So we offer that.
That is absolutely fascinating.
Great way to buy something.
Okay, so you know a lot of people are when they go in, like I said, they'll walk in and then they're greeted by someone, and then at that point, what knowledge and what background do most of your gemologists have?
Well, our sales associates have been there many years, and they're very experienced in what they do, and they've had their diamond certification. So when they're telling you what the color and clarity is, they know what they're talking about.
Sure.
And all of our diamonds come graded, either GIA, EGL, or IGI, and they're there, and we pull the certificates up and let them see it. But the best way to do, I feel, when you're buying that special diamond, whether it's lab created or natural, is just look at the stone, because it's a matter of opinion. So when you look at it, if it catches your eye and that beauty just sparks you, you know that's the right stone for you. And many times we'll pull out 2 or 3 or 4, and they're looking at that and they'll say, you know, I really like the way that looks. And I have to agree with them. So they're all unique.
Well, and speaking of things, you know, when people come in and let's say they get engaged,
Yes.
and the ring isn't exactly the right size. Do you have somebody there who
Yes,
can?
we have. Yes, we size it on premise, and we take care of that for them. And many times, if they need it and it's for that special occasion, we can. If they come in the morning, by that evening, we can do that on special request. We try to get it done that same day if they need it, and it's called for. So yes.
Okay, so
Right
the vault is located, I know, right by CVS
Yes.
in Fig Garden Village on the corner of Palm and Shaw. If people want to look at your website, where would they go? If they want to look at
thevaultjewelers.com, and you'll find it there. Just Google it; it'll pop up, or Google or just,
And they can always call too, because
Yes,
I know that
yes.
you or your lovely wife
Yes,
Elaine will be
yeah.
there, or one of your sales associates, to answer any questions that are needed.
Yeah, we'll guide you through it. The most important thing I can say in concluding today is we want our customers to feel at home, at ease, and just feel like family. And if we can do that, I'd say we've done our job, and we feel good about what we do.
Well, I wish you continued success, because
Thank you.
40 years is nothing to sneeze at. That's actually a really good run, and it's going to continue to go strong, because
We enjoy it.
Yes, and that's what it's all about. You love what you do, and you
Yes.
do what you love, and you make the customers feel at home.
And we love people.
There you do.
We sure do.
All righty. Well,
All right.
this is Hope Roski with Business, Arts, and Events.
Welcome back to Briggs on Books, where we talk to authors about their books, about their process, how they get a book published. Most of us are trying to write and publish a book, and these authors we bring on, they've done it. So we're going to find out how they did it and find out a little bit about their book. By the way, this is a book for young boys. Not only do I have the book here, I have the author. Let's bring in Gene Miller. Welcome, Gene.
Hi, Mike. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, who's this book for, by the way? Here's the cover. It's for school kids? What ages?
Initially, I wrote the book, Mike, for my oldest two grandsons that were going into middle school.
Uh-huh.
But when Kirkus did their review in October, they indicated it should be an adult nonfiction / memoir read. So it's classified as a middle schooler YA book.
Yeah.
But adults are reading it and enjoying it because of the humor and the adventures.
Yeah, I was reading up about it. It does sound like it's very humorous. So, by the way, I read young adult books all the time, and one of the biggest challenges is to get young boys to read a book. So.
Yeah, I had to twist my grandson's arms to get it started, but once they got into it, they've been enjoying it, and they're almost finished.
Yeah. Sometimes what our teacher would do is they would read us the first chapter of a book in the classroom and say, if you want to know the rest of the book, you got to go get it. So hopefully some teachers are listening and they will do that. Can you tell us about some of the chapters? Each chapter stands on its own. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mike. The way it's designed, it's 15 short stories. That's another benefit for middle school readers because they are short, you know. Yeah. And each one takes you either on an adventure of a middle schooler through the lens of about an 11-year-old. I kind of start telling the story as an 11-year-old, but I go back to around third grade, and I talk about some instances of bullying that occurred in school, on the school bus, and then adventures along the Delaware River, where we grew up in South Jersey, about 12 miles north of Philly.
That's right. I didn't ask you this when we came on the air. Tell our viewers where you are.
Yeah, we live in Chemung Township, which is right in the middle of the area between Philadelphia and Atlantic City. We're located in the Pine Barrens, which is a giant woods and farm reserve of over 1.5 million acres.
Wow. See, I had no idea that was happening back there. Now, we, out here in California, we go to the beach. What do you call it in Jersey?
We go to the shore.
To the shore, yeah. That's interesting. And is it like ours here? Is it sunny and you play in the water and stuff?
If you're there from like probably Memorial Day until now, late September, it sure is sunny and everybody's on the beach and has staked out their claim of their sand and their umbrellas and everybody's rolling into the water if it's warm.
This book, basic question I ask everybody is, who's this book for? Is it just for boys or will girls read it too?
I got to tell you, Mike, the title throws you off a bit because it sounds like it is for middle school boys only because it's from a perspective of a middle school kid. I'm an only child, so I didn't have any sisters, big sisters or little sisters. I didn't have any brothers, so I kind of connected with families along the street and the block of Delanco, and a lot of those little sisters kind of became my little sister. Mm-hmm. Especially my best friend, Mark Bruno, and his little sister, Deanna. She was always along for the ride. We tried to get away from her, so she didn't tell on us.
Telling you guys, yeah. So it's for anyone. And like I said, I read young adult books all the time. I enjoy the heck out of them. And it sounds like this one's going to be a lot of fun for anyone.
Well, I tried because I've been in education before I retired a year ago for 44 years. I began teaching at the middle school level, then eventually taught in the high school level, then became a middle school principal. So like 35 of my years is in public schools at that grade level. So I do know middle schoolers, you know.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Eventually, I ended my career the last 9 years at Stockton University in the School of Education, teaching the older kids, and that was a nice change too.
Yeah, I guess so. You are uniquely qualified to write a book that middle schoolers might read.
Yeah. The other part, when I wrote the book, I included, I hired an illustrator and her name was Susan McGettigan. And she did such a fine job of doing color illustrations, one illustration at the end of each chapter to kind of bring everything together. It lends itself to that